What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
5 vs. Chapter 72 Napoleon Ghost. I want to join the Revolutionary Army for a better future. Advertise here. The flames blazed into the sky under the night, and the dark night sky was dyed bright orange. The Golden City is finally over. This big golden ship that was once regarded as a holy place for entertainment by many people collapsed in the fire. After sailing for a certain distance, it sank into the sea and slept with the ship full of gold. Many people ran out. They jumped into the sea and scattered around in horror, trying to find the nearby island and escape this terrible disaster. With the escape of these few people, the story of rocks resurrecting as a ghost circulated on the sea. Too many people were shocked by this, and heard everything that did not change. The once dead king returned, crawled out of hell and became a fierce ghost, stirring the waves on the sea again, setting off a terrifying bloody wind. This is the first time that a well-known and dead character in the world has returned as a ghost. Many people are therefore wondering whether the heroes who were buried in the sea will come back someday, and death is no longer the end. But it doesn't matter, the slaughter of Rock's ghosts is still going on, and the post-death overlord got the order from the master to turn New World upside down. Newspapers about the rumors of the ghost of Rocks, flying in every corner of New World. Eternal hell. Ding. Admiral Aokiji Kuzan is scared, scared point plus 10. Ding. Golden Emperor Tezzolo is frightened, startle point plus 5. Ding. Mr. Tanaka is scared, scared point plus 3. Ding. Celestial dragons. A series of tones are refreshing the screen. It's all due to the actions of the water ghosts and the rocks ghosts. It's not even just the people who these two ghosts face directly. The news spread explosively and spread to every corner of the new world. The scared points came out one by one, as if they were cutting leaks crazy. The harvest is full. Luo Wen's eyes are very bright, and he has made a new discovery with the help of this. That is, the scare point is actually different. The two emotions of scare and scare can cause shock to people, and they can also be shocked. They don't have to make people feel scared. This is a special point he discovered. Because of the Rock's ghost incident, many people were really shocked. The dead were resurrected, which broke the laws of the world. It was too shocking. This directly caused the points to be swiped and exploded. In a short time, Luo Wen's shock point has exceeded 10,000. Moreover, this number is still rising continuously, which makes Luo Wen unexpected and pleasantly surprised. At this moment, the pale Kana came up with a rich breakfast. This scene made people panic, and a ghost was delivering breakfast. But Luo Wen didn't feel it. Instead, she looked forward to the tray with breakfast in her hand. Today is tonkatsu ramen, 807 inches. Luo Wen admired, took a sip, the aroma was tangy, ja coconut, don't go out for the time being. Let's continue cooking for me first. Quote. Ja Yuchang's cooking skills are really good, and he is better than himself. The quality of his life has been greatly improved in the past few days. Follow the master's arrangement. Ja Yuji placed the ramen in front of Luo Wen, folded his hands in front of him, and was very respectful to Luo Wen. Then it's decided. Luo Wen smiled, picked up the chopsticks and the noodles, the taste was really good. Now the whole world has been overturned, and the scary point is endless, and ghosts are not enough. And you can also smoke some ghosts to fill up the vacancy of Ja coconut. Luo Wen is now scared a little bit more than 10,000, it is incredibly wealthy. Let's take a shot first. Luo Wen put down his chopsticks and made a decision in his heart, look at what kind of ghost you can get this time. He was full of expectations. He was very satisfied with the effect of the last 3 consecutive draws, but he didn't know if he could continue his luck this time. Ding. Consume 300 scare points, draw. Ding. Successfully drawn, get the ghost, Napoleon. Luo Wen was shocked. Can you still get this? Open black lens bracket Napoleon's ghost. Once an outstanding military strategist, he turned into a ghost after his death and was re-summoned into this world. 1. Ghost. Luo Wen smiled, and the system's description of Napoleon's ghost is very simple. It is a ghost rather than a ghost. In other words, this is a ghost of an ordinary person, at most because it is a ghost extracted by the system, which has the characteristics of being difficult to kill, but I am afraid that there is nothing to fight against, at least in the pirate world. Luo Wen feels that the ghost himself is in a runaway. It doesn't feel very. Suddenly, in the middle of speaking, Luo Wen had a flash of light in his mind, walked to the window of the cabin, and looked up in the other direction of the prison. At the next moment, Luo Wen had an idea in his heart, and he turned into a ghost, walked towards the thick wall of eternal hell, and then in the eyes of the prisoners, they passed like a ghost. He is going to the 5 floor again. Luo Wen has always had a good memory. He found the familiar road on the 5th and 5th floor that he had been to once, and found it again after a few turns. At this time, the ladyboy King Ivankov was mixing up with a group of ladyboys. Luo Wen quietly leaned over, vaguely heard that they seemed to be talking about something. Impel down is too poor recently, there is nothing to steal. Yeah, I have been emptied for several days. Who is the one who stole so much? The place I've been is like being licked by a CGEF mouse, and I didn't even leave a single piece of hair. I miss Magellan's wine. Ivankov has a headache now. Nothing to steal means that their sources of supplies are reduced. So many shemales have to make ends meet. Who the hell is stealing from us? Ivankov held his big head with one hand, looking very distressed. And at this moment, a cold hand suddenly placed on his shoulder, almost screaming at Ivankov. He suddenly turned his head, but saw that there was someone standing behind him who did not know when was Luo Wen. Luo Wen boy, you almost scared me into a cardiac arrest. Ivankov's mouth twitched. Just now he felt that his hand was cold, like a dead hand. Ding. Shemale King Ivankov is scared, scared +1. Listening to the beep in his ear, Luo Wen smiled. He constricted his ghost body, his cold body warmed up, and looked at Ivankov again, long time no see. Ivankov blinked his big eyes with curled eyelashes, and looked unexpectedly at Luo Wen who was visiting suddenly. This neighbor hadn't been here for a long time. I came here today to ask you something. Luo Wen is straightforward, without concealing, as the Gazuo army stronghold, Baldigo, the island of white soil. Quote. Hear the words. Ivankov's expression changed suddenly. He had never told Luo Wen that he was the Jaijin, and now Luo Wen suddenly mentioned Jaijin in front of him. And also pointed out the base camp of the Revolutionary Army. Jie Lujun. Why did Luo Wenboy suddenly ask this? Ivankov forcibly resisted the change in his expression, but his face was still pulling out, his expression was very unnatural. Curiously ask. Luo Wen smiled. He knew Ivankov's facial expression changed in an instant and he knew that he hadn't remembered the wrong place. This guy Ivankov is like this, his face is big and his expression is very ostentatious, he can't hide it at all. Don't worry, I won't endanger the lives of those cute guys who oppose celestial dragons in Zojun. Luo Wen glanced at Ivankov, who couldn't hide the nervousness, and smiled with these words. He did not stay, turned and left. The body turned into a ghost again, even though it was a wall in front of it, it was easy to pass through, and disappeared in a flash. It's okay if you don't say this, it's even more frustrating when you say it. Ivankov was really a little panicked. He came to ask this question inexplicably, and said such inexplicable things, no matter how he heard it, it made people feel that it was not right. Luo Wenboy, wait, he yelled and ran after him, trying to ask Luo Wen more clearly, but a big face hit the wall directly. The dragons may be dangerous. Ivankov clutched his painful and red nose. But how are we going to inform the dragon? The ladyboys next to him were also panicked. They heard Luo Wen and Ivankov's conversation, and they were really worried that Luo Wen would do anything to the GU army. Think of a way, the jailer, the prisoner who is about to be released, no matter what, you must send this news quickly. Ivankov is anxious, Luo Wen's original impression in his mind is strange and terrible, which makes people wary. Now that Luo Wen throws off such a thoughtless sentence, Ivankov really can't sit still. In an instant, the 5-story ladyboy paradise was in chaos, and many ladyboys started to act, wanting to inform the leader of the leather army outside, the dragon. Shuttle out of the 5 floor, Luo Wen was standing in a small corridor without people. Do you know what to do? Luo Wen looked at a vague and transparent figure in front of him. No, join the revolutionary army and led them to victory. A figure bends down slightly in front of Luo Wen, performing the same etiquette as a Western aristocrat. He wears a two-cornered hat and a French aristocratic costume. This king who once had a temperament in a country has a powerful respect that makes people breathe in every gesture. Responsibility for aura. There is a very interesting saying that Napoleon was rumored to be a short, but Luo Wen now visually observes that Napoleon's ghost is close to 1.7 meters, in fact, it can't be considered a short. Listening to Napoleon's ghost, Luo Wen smiled and nodded and waved gently. Go ahead. Hear the words. Napoleon's ghost saluted again, and there was a soul horse galloping from a distance between his hands. He turned on his horse and disappeared in the sound of horse's hoofs until he disappeared into the darkness. After half a day, the island of white soil. As its name suggests, the entire island is full of white soil in the desert. The dust flying in the sky does not stop all year round, forming a natural sandstorm barrier. At the same time, a small boat emerged from the sea in the distance and slowly sailed towards the island of white soil. There are several figures on the deck of the ship, all of them wearing kabuto hats, covering their faces, making them indistinct. The leader walked out of the deck, gently put down his kabuto hat, and looked towards the white earth island that was getting closer and closer in the distance. Under Kabuto's hat, there is a fierce face with facial features. Surprisingly, he is known as the most dangerous prisoner in history, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. Confirmed, all the tails following are cleaned up. A slender figure came up from behind, and the sea breeze blew her kabuto hat, who was also an important figure in the leather army, Koala. Long nodded. At this moment, there are smiles on the faces of these important figures in the Revolutionary Army. Recently, they are in a very good mood. Several key actions have been successfully concluded. The power of the CP organization seems to have weakened, and the attention of the world politics to their Revolutionary Army is also declining, and they are attracted by other things. He didn't stare at them as he did before. The haunting thing is very exaggerated recently. The whole new world reported as boiling. It is said that even the big pirate rocks, who once made the world's politics a headache, has survived and become a ghost. Kral tilted his head and asked curiously, Mr. Long, do you think ghosts are real? There is no such thing as a ghost. Long shook his head. Rocks came back to life. This should be an illusion created by some other means. If the dead can be resurrected, then can our companions who live and sacrifice for the sake of leather come back to life? His eyes flickered. Thoughtfully, I think this series of haunted things is probably someone's hands and feet, aiming at the world politics. There are still some like-minded and insightful people in this world who are talking with us. Fight together and secretly oppose world politics. Koala nodded vigorously, and she seemed very excited when she heard the words like-minded, and her little face flushed. I have the same idea as Mr. Long. From behind, another figure came out. The face under Kabuto's cap was too young. It was Sabo. Behind the haunting must be a like-minded person who has the same ideals as us. Sabo looked at the distance with a firm expression. While talking, the boat slowly drew on the shore, and the cadres jumped out of the boat and quickly disappeared into the desert, walking towards the real base of the Leather Army. On the way, they talked and laughed. Now the situation is very good. It can be said that it is very convenient for them to use their fists. This is the best time for them. Sabo walked at the gate of the base, and suddenly thought of the food and drinks that were in the base refrigerator when he was replenishing supplies some time ago, and patted Scar's stomach and said, when I get to the base, I have to eat something first. I haven't eaten much in the past 2 days. I'm really going to starve to death. Let's take a rest this time and leave for Bokhara later. In the past 2 days, he followed the dragon and kept moving around. Until today, he had no time to spare, but soon he was going to a new country to overthrow the local brutal rule. Good. Long smiled and nodded. Everyone has really worked hard these past 2 days. The base was close in front of them, and they had already walked in when they were talking. They walked straight to the meeting room. The meeting room here is used for meetings, but at the same time it is also used for rest. As soon as he arrived in the conference room, Sabo licked his lips, and immediately wanted to open the refrigerator and have a good time. But as soon as he walked to the refrigerator, and before he could open the refrigerator door, the whole person suddenly froze and stopped in place. Something is wrong. Sabo felt a clear chill coming from behind, not the air conditioning in the refrigerator, but something more terrifying, making the hair on the back of his neck stand upside down. In an instant, not only Sabo reacted, but everyone else, including the dragon, also felt this way. They all looked back, wondering when there was someone standing behind them. This person is very strange. He has different clothes and clothes. The hat on his head is very large, but it is different from the captain's hat. The body is leaning towards transparent, and he can even see the wall behind him through it, like a ghost. Sabo looked at it, and put his hands on the refrigerator door handle all back, his eyes fixed on someone he had never seen before. Is it not a member of the Leather Army, nor does it look like a human being? Is it a special race? Or is it demon fruit power? Sabo frowned and asked vigilantly. Who are you? I am not a human being. Napoleon's ghost looked at them and said this seriously. Everyone was stunned. What do you mean by this? Long frowned, watching the breathless person in front of him vigilantly and suspiciously. His physical skills are very powerful, and he has inherited the advantages of his father Garp very well. Only one glance can tell that the person in front of him is breathless in every move. If you want to describe it, it's like a dead lake without a bit of flowing. Even if the stone sinks, it won't make ripples. Literally, I am not a human being. The ghost of Napoleon was very calm and looked at everyone again. Introduce myself. My name is Napoleon Bonaparte. I am a dead person, a ghost. This moment, he thought of what Luo Wen had confessed, stepped forward, stretched out his hand, and a serious ghost came from his mouth. I want to join the Revolutionary Army and create a better future with you. Chapter 73. A group of ghosts enters the body. Sakazuki is like a ghost. Advertise here. Night fell. According to Sabo, the Revolutionary Army's next attack location, the country of Voltra. In the dense night, white figures lurked in the alleys. They were like ghosts lying on the ground, silently waiting for their prey to be caught. Why haven't they come yet? Among them, a figure frowned. He was a CP chess piece placed in this country. He caught the clue and knew in advance that the Revolutionary Army was going to act tonight to overthrow the rule of this country. However, they have been waiting for most of the night, and no one came at all, and none of the British footballers of the Revolutionary Army had seen it. Damn it, I was deceived. A leading white figure cursed in a low voice. He raised his head and looked at Anzi in the distance. The Zhe Tiaojun's originally planned action suddenly changed. There is only one possibility that Anzi has been discovered. The Revolutionary Army detected danger, so the operation ended early. The action failed. Evacuate. The leading CP staff took out the phone worm and relayed the news. The executive power of the CP organization was shown, and the figures hidden in the alleys quickly disappeared, and all evacuated in a very short time. Anzi also left. He knew that he had been exposed. He could not continue to use his identity. If he did not leave, he might even be attacked and killed by the Revolutionary Army. While they were evacuating, in the darkness that no one noticed, a pair of eyes was quietly watching them. Wait until everyone has evacuated. In a small alley, the ghost of Napoleon walked out of the darkness. His transparent body seemed to be nothingness, and it was impossible to detect it at all. At this moment, the ghost of Napoleon was holding a phone worm in his hand, and while turning to a position ahead, he said to the other end of the phone worm, "They left." At the same time, another secret room. Wearing a cloak, the hidden dragon saw what happened just now through the video phone worm in the hands of Napoleon's ghost. He saw everything in the dark and couldn't help but slap his tongue. Can it be monitored like this? In the dragon's perspective, the ghost of Napoleon stood in the darkness of the alley where the CP agency was located from beginning to end, but the CP agency did not notice it at all, allowing Napoleon to see everything, and even the conversation was also monitored. Sabo's face is not good at this time. The dark boy deceived their revolutionary army, pretending to be refugees from the Voltra country, told them that there was a brutal rule here, introduced them into this country, and targeted and killed them. Thinking of this, Sabo looked at the ghost of Napoleon who was coming from a distance, his eyes flickering slightly. If it weren't for the ghost of Napoleon, fighting would inevitably break out tonight, and a head-on collision with the CP organization would probably kill some people as a result, frustrating the recent smooth operations. The ghost of Napoleon came from a distance. He walked in the dark without a trace of footsteps. He was silent and ghostly. It's time to act. The ghost of Napoleon approached, and a low and hoarse ghost sound came from his mouth. However, I suggest that the loopholes in the plan should be corrected according to my proposal. It will be more conducive to action, and it will be faster and better for this. People who suffer in this area bring a good life. The corners of Sabo's mouth twitched. Such a spooky ghost said such things, no matter how he listened to it, he felt twisted. At this time, the dragon next to him moved, the hand under the cloak stretched out, a smile appeared on his vicious face, and he said to the ghost of Napoleon. Mr. Napoleon, on behalf of the Revolutionary Army, I invite you to join us to liberate the suffering people in this world. He was not talking about agreeing to Napoleon to join, but actively inviting. This is Long expressing his sincerity and the sincerity of the Revolutionary Army. Although the ghost of Napoleon needs to be tested in order to become a true member of the Revolutionary Army, the sincerity that should be given must be possessed. Upon seeing this, everyone looked at each other. With the dragon's movement, it meant that a ghost had really joined the Revolutionary Army. A ghost companion thought of this. Sabo's mouth whispered, "This is barely a like-minded person." Face the dragon's invitation. The ghost of Napoleon nodded and accepted. At this moment, the ghost of Napoleon thought of Luo Wen's instructions. Now that he has joined the Revolutionary Army, the first step of the plan has been taken. The next step is to become a cadre, and the next step is to be the ghost leader of the Revolutionary Army. On the side of the dragon, he smiled and didn't say much. Like everyone else, he looked at the country in the night. Although there are hidden suns, there is indeed oppression in this country, otherwise they would not want to come over. Action. The calm voice of the dragon fell, and the figure in the cloak flashed in the night, and the fast news went to the corners of the city. A week later, the Revolutionary Army has undergone major changes. Since the ghost of Napoleon joined the Revolutionary Army, the largest and most intense offensive frenzy has been set off since the Revolutionary Army was founded. The battle started one after another, and the Revolutionary Army launched an offensive against one city after another. They would appear where there was oppression and overthrow the local rule. They are invincible and invincible. Everywhere they go is the banner of freedom. No one can stop them. Especially the team with the ghost of Napoleon, which has a history of military exploits. The CP organization has made many actions against them. However, most of them ended in failure. For many failures of the plan, every country has been overthrown and is no longer under the control of world politics. The head of the CP organization was angry about this and even punished the CP members who failed to implement the plan. Next, they learned of a reason. A very powerful person came to the Revolutionary Army. It was this person who repeatedly saw their plan and let them swallow the bitter fruit of failure. Check. You must check it out for me. The CP3 chief is angry. He wants to know who this person is. Soon, they spent an unimaginable price, found an opportunity with the death of several top secret agents, and photographed the powerful character who caused CP to stumble. Only one photo was sent, but it was also an incredible photo. The character in the photo tends to be translucent, with slightly curly short hair and a two-cornered hat. He blends into the night with an inexplicable weirdness that makes people creepy. Who is this? The head of CP3 widened his eyes. At the same time, Impel down, eternal hell, a small wooden house standing in the dark prison floor. At this moment, there was a sound of surprise in the house. Huh, you got this kind of ghost. Luo Wen looked at the prompt on the system panel and blinked slightly. He woke up early this morning and took a cold shower comfortably after he finished washing and exercising. As the saying goes, draw a card and wash your face first. Luo Wen not only washes his face, but also washes his whole body. Ownership. Ding. Consume 300 scare points. Draw ghosts. Burning ghosts to death. There was a big fire in a town, many people were buried in the fire, and their deaths were miserable. After many years, their grievances became ghosts, a huge group of ghosts, and the people who were buried in the flames recovered in an alternative way. A picture emerges before Luo Wen's eyes. It was the ruins of a small town, blazing in the fire, a bunch of scorched, stinking souls swayed in the flames, their expressions were hideous and terrifying, and there was a vaguely stern wailing, which made people shudder. Watching this scene, Luo Wen raised the corners of his mouth and smiled teasingly. There was a smiling voice in the mouth. You go to Marineford and find Admiral Akainu Sakazuki. The group of ghosts shook and wailed in the fire, and as Luo Wen waved, they all disappeared. At the same time, there was a low murmur in the room. One more shot. One more shot. Ding. Consume 300 scare points. Draw. Ding. Successfully drawn. Get the ghost. Ghost ship Flying Dutchman. Ghost ship Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship in the legend that will never return home. It is destined to drift and sail on the sea. Meeting this ghost ship means that destruction is about to come. This ghost is one of the best ghosts for me. In the log cabin room, a low male voice continued to sound, and he continued to say, purchase the package upgrade, the ghost ship will be arrogant. Marineford. Naval Headquarters is about to be completely evacuated, and many people have already left here and went to the new G1 branch of New World. Please ask for flowers. Before long, a formal document will be issued, announcing that the Naval Headquarters will be changed from Marineford to the G1 branch. The preliminary estimate of time will be set in a week. However, just at this juncture, anomalies appeared. A big fire suddenly broke out in the dormitory, and it burned quickly and spread quickly. In an extremely short period of time, half of the Naval Headquarters were swallowed into the sea of fire, and even the middle office building was in danger. This was beyond everyone's expectations, and the fire could not be stopped. Even Sengoku, who was staying in Marineford, came. He instructed Marine to put out the fire everywhere, to put out the fire as soon as possible, and it could not continue to spread like this. The situation is very anxious. The burning flame cannot be extinguished even if it touches the water of Shanghai. Even if Sengoku's command is correct and decisive, it only allows the fire to be controlled for a short time, and there is no way to extinguish it. At this moment, Sakazuki is here. Leave it to me. Sakazuki saw this scene as soon as he disembarked after completing the mission, which made him look ugly and rushed over immediately. Boom. There was lava surging on his body, thick black smoke rolling, scorching air waves surging, and the surrounding marine subconsciously retreated. Lava fruit is so powerful that it can even swallow other flames. This is the fundamental reason why lava fruit is hailed as Mara fruit. Boom. Sakazuki's body was standing in place, and a large amount of magma evaporated from the surface, with a blazing fire, like a wave swept into the burning fire. Suddenly, just as the magma was about to swallow the flames soaring to the sky suddenly dispersed, revealing the wailing ghosts inside. Their whole body was pitch black, exuding a stench, their eyes were burnt and only hollows were left, and the coke-like hands stretched out, as if to grab someone outside the flame, drag them in and burn to death like them. Sengoku's body shuddered, and his pupils suddenly shrank. He had dealt with ghosts too many times, and he recognized at a glance that this is a group of ghosts full of huge grievances. At this moment, he understood why the flame could not be extinguished. This was not an ordinary fire at all, but a group of ghosts were doing it. Pretend to be a ghost. Sakazuki snorted coldly. He was not afraid of the group of ghosts. His ability erupted completely. The whole person was really like an erupting active volcano. The clouds are burning. This was amazing. The magma turned into a shower of meteors, one after another, hundreds of them, shining across the night sky, and it could be clearly seen from the sea 10,000 meters away. Boom. They all fell down, bombarding the group of ghosts with enough heat to evaporate the sea. Sakazuki wanted to evaporate the group of ghosts on the spot. Roar 1. Invisibly, groups of ghosts were howling, bathed in high-temperature lava, their bodies were twisting, gradually becoming transparent and fuzzy, as if they were really evaporated. However, Sakazuki frowned and he noticed something was wrong. The blurred group of ghosts turned into gloomy shadows, following the magma he shot up against him, actually trying to get into his body with this. Sakazuki stepped on the ground, and in an instant magma erupted, evaporating from the surface, and rushed into the sky, making it bright as day. But it didn't work. The wandering ghost broke through the magma barrier and drilled towards Sakazuki's body. Ming. The group of ghosts were wailing, and they opened their teeth and danced their claws under the night sky, and finally disappeared one by one, all merged into the molten slurry, and entered Sakazuki's body. Moment. Sakazuki's movement stopped, the lava tumbling on his body stagnated, and the whole person paused briefly. At this moment, the surface of his body was surging with black air, and a group of ghosts surrounded him. In the shadow behind him under the moonlight, there were hundreds of hands stretched out. It was a group of ghosts dancing in a wild, and now it entered him. Body of Sakazuki is like a ghost, his expression in the magma is not real, but it gives everyone an incomparable pressure. It looks terrifying and makes everyone sluggish. Even Sengoku. They all stared at this moment and opened their mouths slightly. Chapter 74 The Ghost Ship in the Fog, the red-haired ship was smashed. Advertise here. Under the night sky, the group of ghosts went away, turned into phantoms, and entered Sakazuki's body. The fire that could not be extinguished by ordinary sea water also gradually subsided. It's the same situation as Kuzan. Sengoku's pupils shrank, and immediately thought of Kuzan who was possessed by a water ghost. Only, Kuzan is a ghost, and Sakazuki is a group of ghosts. Sengoku looked ugly, and asked Sakazuki for safety, worrying. In response, Sakazuki shook his head in silence, indicating that he was okay. Oh, you look so handsome Sakazuki like this. A light came from a distance, revealing the figure of Kizaru Bohui Salino, with a grandiose smile at the corner of his mouth. Although he was joking, his eyes kept gazing at him with weird eyes. He was originally on a mission in a field. He just rushed back tonight and saw Sakazuki being possessed by a group of ghosts, which made his expression a little unnatural. There are a total of 3 Admiral in the headquarters. Now all but myself are possessed by ghosts. You are still in the mood to make a joke. Sengoku flipped through Byakugan, and his sight was not far away from Sakazuki, worried that his body might change. Ming Ming. A group of ghosts and phantoms entangled and wailed on the surface of Sakazuki's body. The voice was very stern, as if suffering terrible torture, which made the people who heard it sore. Sakazuki grinned his eyebrows, his resolute face didn't fluctuate much, he raised his hand and grabbed the ghost phantom that emerged from his body, but his palm fell to nothing. Immediately afterwards, all the ghosts disappeared, shrinking into Sakazuki's body, as if entering into his body to fall asleep, and the miserable wailing disappeared. Sakazuki, you and I go to the research room to check your body, and your mission will be cancelled during this time. Sengoku was low and his eyes flickered slightly. He was still worried that something would happen to Sakazuki. There is a research room in the headquarters, originally for the development of some military weapons, or to study the development of Devil Fruit's capabilities, but since the beginning of the haunting, the center of gravity of the research room has been poured out, and a large part of the resources are used to research. 8-7, Ghost. No, I'm okay. Sakazuki shook his head, I don't think there is a big problem. Ghosts can't affect me, and I won't be able to maintain justice because ghosts affect me. He is staunch and low, and decisively refuses to cancel the mission. The justice in his heart makes it impossible for him to stop, stubborn and firm, and impossible to be moved by others. Sengoku sighed when he heard the words. He did not persuade him anymore, but continued to insist that Sakazuki go to check his body. Regarding Sengoku's insistence, this time, Sakazuki did not refuse, and went to the research room with Sengoku to investigate the ghost on his body. This time, the inspection lasted a whole night, and the results did not come out until the next morning. The inspection report showed that there were no problems with Sakazuki's body values and everything was normal. As for the ghosts in the body, it seemed that they were all asleep. There was no way to investigate, and there was no sign at all. This is the same as Kuzan, there is no problem with the body, the ghost seems to fall asleep and disappear. After Sakazuki got the inspection report, he immediately went to see to defend justice, but was pressed hard by Sengoku and asked him to continue to observe at the headquarters for a period of time. Until 2 days later, Sakazuki's various values showed normal, and then Sengoku let Sakazuki go to see. One by one, Sengoku has a headache. Both Admiral are possessed by ghosts, but they are not willing to listen to him. Each has its own rules of conduct. Yeah, that's how Sakazuki's character is. Pelusalino walked out with black tea and looked at Sakazuki going out to sea, with the iconic, wretched, smile on his face. By the way, Pelusalino, are you going to the Sabayati archipelago for a mission today? Sengoku looked around and asked suddenly. Pelusalino nodded. Then he found that Sengoku's eyes were weird. It seems to be saying that one by one you must be careful not to be possessed by ghosts. This look make Pelusalino's eyelids twitch slightly. The other side. New World. The sun was shining, making the sea more and more blue. At this time, a large ship broke through the sea, setting off silver and white waves on both sides to soar. The big ship Shanghai pirate flag is waving in the wind, and the skull pattern on it seems to come alive, and the 3 scars on the left eye are vivid. This is astonishingly one of the 4 Emperor's pirates of Kunlun New World, known as the Red Hair Pirates of the Iron-Armed Pirates. Shanks stood on the bow, took a sip of wine against the gale, and wiped the drink from his mouth. This wine is really strong. Putting down the hip flask, he looked at the other people on the boat. Beckman and the others were clinking glasses to talk about the big things that happened during the exchange. Usopp took the initiative to mention the ghost rumors of rocks. This news made the faces of several cadres present slightly changed. At the same time, another piece of news was involved by Usopp. It is said that the night when the Rock's ghost subverted the Golden City, 12 celestial dragons died. The world politics was furious because of this. 3 admirals from Marine came out to conquer the ghosts, even at any cost. Use Buster Call to kill ghosts. Usopp added that this is the news in the newspaper and its authenticity is uncertain, but it is certain that there is definitely something wrong with celestial dragons in the Golden City, and the world politics will inevitably be furious as a result. At this time, Shanks heard it again. Beckman talked about a recent news that Bullet, the descendant of the devil, has escaped from prison and is still telling ghost stories everywhere. The guy Bullet used to be with me on Captain Roger's boat. No matter how you look at it, he wouldn't be a babbling character who can tell ghost stories. Shanks grinned, took another sip of strong wine, and smiled lightly, as this guy fascinated by ghosts. With that said, he grabbed the latest newspaper in Usopp's hand and wanted to take a closer look. It's so foggy. At this moment, Fatty Lakilu jumped up, holding the mast with one hand, but his fat body was flexible, hanging like a monkey, supporting him and looking into the distance. Shanks heard the sound, stopped reading the newspaper, raised his head, and looked towards the sea behind. I saw a vast expanse of whiteness on the sea, and I don't know when the heavy fog began. The fog was thick and pressed against the sea, blocking the line of sight, just like the heavy clouds falling from the sky. Upon seeing this, Shanks frowned. If it was just ordinary fog, he wouldn't care, but vaguely through the fog, Shanks saw a ship. A big ship that exudes a bright green light, and is in ruins, and even its sails are rotten. And what's even more bizarre is that this big damaged ship is not sailing on the sea, it is more like floating on the sea. Shanks' eyes flashed with red light, he turned on the color of sight and hearing, and wanted to see more clearly, but in the next second, the dilapidated ship that exuded a ghostly light disappeared, hidden in the fog, no trace. What's that? Usopp's eyes widened. Ghost ship. Lakiru took a bite of a chicken leg and looked at the weird ship in the fog. He thought of a sea ghost story and legend that would be heard by pirates. It is said that a ship that accidentally sinks will last for many years. After reappearing, it became a ghost ship sailing on the sea. However, this is just a legend that no one has actually seen it. Come to us. Beckman was low, the cigarette in his mouth burned more than half of the time, and he took a deep sip. See you. The thick fog behind suddenly accelerated, like a white wave, pressing toward their ship overwhelmingly. Turn the rudder and avoid the fog. Beckman was very calm and commanded for the first time. Crunch. The rudder was full, and the maximum angle of the hull of the Reed Firth was tilted to the side, but the fog was surging too fast, and he caught up with it in the blink of an eye, wrapping the hull, and it was impossible to dodge or avoid it. The ghost ship is out again. Usopp yelled. His sights and hearings are variants, and he can see far away. At this moment, he clearly sees it, exuding ghostly fluorescence, and the entire dilapidated floating ship is in the big. He appeared in the fog and ran into them. Rumble. The ghost ship is too huge and terrifying, and it really looks like a majestic iceberg. Can the Red Fourth really be able to stop it? Block it. Shanks made a decisive decision. He could see that the Red Force is not sailing as fast as the ghost ship. If this goes on, it will definitely hit it. Boom. He leapt high, like an eagle attacking its prey, holding a sword in one arm and cutting across the sea. Bang bang. At the same time, Beckman shot, raised his gun and pulled the trigger. The bullet attached to armament hockey shattered the air, dragging the long tail of the air wave to burst the ghost ship. Too many people in red hair pirates have taken action. They acted decisively and reacted just to stop the ghost ship. However, let everyone be astonished. Anyone's attack will all fall into the air at the moment near the ghost ship, passing through the translucent hull, falling into the magnificent sea, and setting off the soaring waves. The next moment, the ghost ship smashed against the huge wave. Boom. Reed. The stern of the fosse was hit, and the outer wooden board was sunken, and it burst directly, and the sawdust was flying in all directions. This is too weird. It obviously failed during the attack, but the medical spirit ship became an entity in the next second and hit the Reed Fourth. A big rupture appeared, the Reed Fourth was hit and moved horizontally on the sea, the hull screamed and cracked, the planks exploded, one steel bar broke, the entire stern was damaged, a terrifying pit appeared, and the seawater came from behind. Pouring into the cabin, everyone can clearly feel that the Red and Furs are sinking. At the same time, the ghost ship hadn't stopped, and arbitrarily pressed towards the Red and Force, as if it wouldn't stop until they were completely crushed. The ship is going to sink like this. This idea appeared in the hearts of all members of Red Hair Pirates. Shanks and others jumped up one after another. They crossed the restless sea and jumped towards the ghost ship comparable to an iceberg. Puff. Shanks landed, and he felt his footstep on the entity, no longer the former nothingness. But soon, this sense of substance disappeared, and all the people who jumped over were empty, their bodies passed through the deck of the ghost ship one after another, and fell straight into the sea. At the same time, dense fog shrouded, covering everything here. Immediately afterwards, the dull collision sound erupted one after another, constantly shaking outwards. This sea caused a strong wind, and the waves became turbulent, but the thick fog was not blown away. At the same time, above this sea area, there is no cloud covered by thick fog. A white seagull is hovering here, and a small and special surveillance phone worm is installed on its back. At this time, the head of the surveillance phone worm turns and its eyes look towards the sea below. All of this is in the eyes of everyone. On the other side, the Holy Land Mariajoy, the headquarters of the CP organization, is a monitoring room that is responsible for monitoring the movements of the Four Emperors pirate group. At this time, the screen shot by the seagull is played synchronously on the display. A strange fog appeared, the wind couldn't blow it away, it was rich and heavy, and instantly swallowed the red hair pirates. Vaguely, a gloomy light flashed in the thick fog. It was a mast, like a big dilapidated ship sailing in the fog. All CP personnel in the monitoring room stood up, their eyes widened and their expressions horrified. At the next moment, they clearly saw that there was a faint flash of sword light in the thick fog, and the trajectory of bullets passing through the air, followed by a dull thunderous collision. Seagulls can't take pictures of the scene in the fog, and only when the fog moves laterally can we vaguely see the scattered wooden boards on the sea. Oh my god, the plank is floating on the sea, and the mast is also broken. The pirate flag pattern on it is red hair pirates. A CP officer swallowed fiercely, only to feel dry. There was a collision in the fog of Gang O, but the monitoring failed to capture the internal scene, but the fragments of the picture that can be seen are enough to make a stormy sea in the hearts of everyone present. How powerful is Red Hair Pirates? All members do not have a demon fruit power, but they stand on the top of New World with their own strength. It is known as the most balanced Four Emperors pirate group. It can be said that everyone is a famous power. No one is weak. They actually collided with a weird ship. Report to Lord Five Elders. Someone yelled and couldn't sit still, and ran out of the monitoring room to report the news to Five Elders. This is enough to shock anyone. The red-haired Shanks may have encountered a ghost. A transparent ghost ship smashed the red-haired ship of the Four Emperors. If this news goes out, it is really enough to shake the world. A little time. Naval Headquarters, meeting room. Sengoku is presiding over the meeting to deal with the follow-up of the fire. Although the fire has passed for several days, the fire engulfed many buildings and half of the barracks dormitory was burned. It will take time to process statistics. Puff. At this time, the phone worm placed by Sengoku suddenly rang. Sengoku raised his brows. This was a call from World Political Affairs. He raised his hand, temporarily stopped the meeting report, and connected the phone worm. Question mark. Sengoku's eyes under the glasses shrank slightly as he listened to the news from the phone worm. After half a ring, he put down the phone worm, looked at the Marines present, and told a shocking news. Red hair pirates encountered a weird ship at sea, like a ghost ship in the legend of sea ghosts, and they collided. How about the red-haired Shanks? Huo Shaoshan's mouth opened slightly, and he forgot to smoke his cigar. All the members of the red hair pirates of the Four Emperors group have fallen into the sea. Sengoku said in a deep voice. Hear the words. The people around are sluggish. The news is incredible. Red hair pirates, as the Four Emperors pirate group, the pirate ship they use, in addition to the basic quality surpassing other pirate ships, is a symbol of the Four Emperors Sea. Thieves. And now this symbol is directly exploded. We should investigate this matter immediately, to check the movements of the red hair, and the strange ship. We can let Marine who is close to 4.5 to put down the task in his hand, go and check first. Huo Shao the mountain's eyes flickered, and I can't wait to send troops to investigate. I remember that Kuzan was near that sea area recently. The ghost in his body has never appeared. Kuzan himself has repeatedly said that there is no problem with his body. In that case, let him go and have a look. Sengoku's eyes were deep, he thought. To use a Marine Admiral. This incident involves two key points, one is suspected of being a ghost, and the other is Four Emperors. You must not be sloppy. Sengoku needs to know what happened in the first place. The ghost ship incident spread rapidly in the dark, and the ship of the Four Emperors pirate group was destroyed. This has not happened for many years. Destroyed. Because the Four Emperors symbolizes the strongest pirates, they all stand at the apex, and they have never fought with each other. Who can destroy their ship? But now it's different. The red-haired Shanks' ship broke and was smashed into pieces by a medical spirit ship. This is not only for Marine to dispatch Admiral, but even the Holy Land has a big move. The powerful CP0 leaves the Holy Land under the instruction of Five Elders to investigate the specifics of this matter. At the same time, the ghost ship is also a sensation. A strange ship that appeared with heavy fog. Some people said that this is a ghost ship legend circulating on the sea, and some people directly think that this ghost ship is a ghost. As a result, the ghost ship was temporarily identified as a ghost and included in a special file. Ghost File. Since the emergence of haunts and the invasion of world politics and Naval Headquarters, a special department specializing in dealing with ghosts has been established secretly, and special ghost files have also been established. Currently included are Videotape, Monastery, Ghost Ship, etc. And now, after the ghost ship is entered into the file, it is tentatively set as the most dangerous level. Because the ghost ship directly threatened the Four Emperors. Chapter 75 The ghost came out of Admiral's body. Advertise here. The ghost ship was recorded in the file in a short period of time, and the level of danger continued to rise. And the red hair pirates that really suffered a ghost ship collision. At this time, everyone fell into the water. Shanks floated on the water, the fog had cleared, the ghost ship was nowhere to be seen, and the surrounding situation was clearly visible. He could see by turning his head slightly. One of his crew members fell into the water, swimming soaked in the water. Fortunately, there is no demon fruit power, otherwise you will really have trouble. And everywhere in the surroundings, you can see the broken wooden wreckage of the hull. A little further away, there is a big ship that is bubbling to sink, because Uzumaki waves appear around the sinking of the hull. Can't let read. Frost sinks. Shanks looked ugly, and swam towards the sinking ship. At the same time, many people moved. Reed Foss was badly damaged and could not sail anymore. But they will not give up. This is the partner of red hair pirates. While acting, Shanks looked at the sea far away. Vaguely, you can see a faint old and broken ship, hidden in the thick fog, floating with the horizontal movement of the fog. What the hell is that? Is devil fruit capable? After the hull stabilized and did not continue to sink, Usopp watched the fog go away, his eyes flickering. Perhaps, it was a ghost ship. At this time, a low and slightly smoky voice sounded, and everyone heard it, but saw that it was Beckman whispering. Everyone was stunned, and all fell silent. As long as they were people who went to sea all year round, they didn't know the legend of the ghost ship. It is said that if a sailing ship is sunk into the sea on a stormy night, it will float up from the bottom of the sea many years later and become a ghost ship that floats on the sea all year round and never sinks. Don't worry, Let's sail away, I'll try to catch some sea kings to pull the boat. Shanks shook his head, his red hair was wet with water and stuck to his forehead. Okay, that's right, now the most important thing is to deal with the Rand and Foss. After that, we will go to 26 to find the ghost ship. I don't believe that we can't get it. I will do it for Rand Buddha. Get revenge. Lakilu nodded vigorously, then lowered his head and glanced at the empty right hand that was holding the chicken leg. I also want to add a word to my drumstick report, Lokiram silently. 3 days later. During these 3 days, special news spread to all parts of the world under the flying of the delivery bird. These reports are undoubtedly related to ghost ships. The first report was that 3 days ago, a pirate fleet in New World encountered heavy fog. In the fog, a legendary ghost ship appeared. After the fog disappeared, someone in the pirate fleet died. The second report was just 2.5 days ago. It followed the previous one and followed one after another. It was a group of underground arms dealers wandering in the black zone. They were covered by heavy fog halfway through the transportation of arms. Then the people and the boat disappeared completely. Someone witnessed it on the nearby island, and there seemed to be a dilapidated ship flashing away in the thick fog. After that, several more reports appeared one after another. Although they were not very disturbing, they have quietly entered people's attention. At this time, 3 days after the first ghost ship appeared, 2 groups of people were looking for the ghost ship in the vast ocean. Somewhere in the sea in New World. Position bias to the east. The Red Hair Pirates group who has processed the Red Fourth and sent them to the City of Seven Waters for repairs is now taking a small temporary spare ship to sea. They were chasing the fog, chasing them all the way for 2 days and 2 nights, running along the clues, and finally they found the fog today. The vast expanse of whiteness, pressed against the distant sea, makes people unable to see the scene in the fog. Shanks recognized it at a glance. This is the fog that appeared along with the ghost ship. At this moment, the place where the fog is hovering is a reef area, but everyone at Red Hair Pirates knows that this will not be the strange ship in the fog hitting the reef. It's more like stopping here on purpose, waiting for them to come over. And on the other side to the west, Kuzan, who was ordered to investigate the ghost ship, has also arrived. This time, Kuzan only brought a small number of people. One is that now the Naval Headquarters is relocating and there is not enough manpower, and the other is that Admiral, Kuzan, is in the line, and there is no need for too many people. Is it there? Suddenly, Kuzan on the deck of the warship raised his head and looked at the distant sea. The fog was hazy there, and everything was shrouded, much like the vision that would accompany the appearance of the ghost ship recorded on the information he had obtained. Let's go ahead. Kuzan waved his hand, and the general ship under the command drove over. As the distance between the warship and the fog narrowed, Kuzan found that the location of the fog was a reef, and there was a piece of land with low tide nearby. Suddenly, Kuzan noticed something and turned his eyes to the east side. In that direction, a group of people came by boat, and the head of the person had red hair like a raging fire, dancing in the gale, extremely conspicuous. Kuzan's eyes raised slightly. Did the 4 Emperors Red Hair Pirates also find it? Are you also here to find the ghost ship? Shanks walked out of the deck with one foot on the bow, looking at Kuzan with a smile, and a hearty laugh. Kuzan looked at it, scratched the scattered slightly curly hair, and said casually, it seems that the information that your ship was damaged by the ghost ship is true. Now you have changed your ship to find the ghost ship for revenge. NS. Yeah, this bastard ghost ship really gives me a headache. Shanks grinned, his tone was very relaxed, and he didn't conceal the meaning of black history, at all. Kuzan stared at him for a moment. Shanks looked up too. 1 Admiral, 1 4 Emperors, the 2 eyes collided in midair. However, none of them chose to do it. This halfway encounter was an accident. Whether it was Kuzan or Shanks, they came for the ghost ship. If they fight here, the follow-up investigation of the ghost ship will definitely be ruined. Therefore, this admiral, a 4 Emperors, tacitly looked away at this moment, and at the same time looked at the thick fog floating on the sea in the distance. Crunch. In the thick fog, there was a toothy sound, like something that had been decayed for many years was reactivating, and a pale green light shimmered in the thick fog at the same time, and the outline of a large and decayed ship appeared faintly. The ghost ship appeared. Kuzan pours white air. Frost climbs on his cheeks, the entire right half of his body is turned into frost, the temperature around his body drops rapidly, and crystal ice flowers appear in the air. At the same time, Shanks also broke out, holding the western sword scabbard with one arm, and Conqueror's Haki rushed up into the night, overwhelming the fog to suppress it. Call. But in the next second, the 2 of them stopped at the same time. Even the Marine who was loading the shells and preparing to fire, and the pirate who raised the gun and was about to pull the trigger, all stopped. A pair of eyes all looked at Kuzan subconsciously. At this moment, on Kuzan's shoulders covered with ice, strands of black air emerged and rolled, and a wet black-haired water ghost head appeared. Immediately afterwards, a swollen and white hand stretched out from his back again, swaying gently in the air, the head was still making a terrifying sound of grinding teeth. Everyone was dumbfounded by this sudden scene, speechless. Shanks looked sideways at Kuzan, and then at the water ghost emerging from Kuzan. What's this? Shanks' eyelids twitched, and he almost couldn't hold back a knife and slashed Kuzan. This scene looked terrifying. A good guy had a rotten head and arms out of thin air. It was an ominous thing no matter what. Facing Shanks's questions, Kuzan didn't have the first time, he just turned his head and looked at the water ghost's head thuddaground, from his shoulder. After a short silence, a ghost possessing me, Kuzan's lips were slightly opened, and a strange voice was mixed in the flat. He raised his hand, covered it with jet black armed color, and grabbed the head of the water ghost on his shoulder. Call. The hand passed through his head, the water ghost disappeared, and then it grew out on Kuzan's left shoulder. He stretched out his hand to grab it, but once again failed. Kuzan raised his head in silence and looked at Shanks next to him. At this moment, the thick fog in the distance suddenly dissipated, the ghost ship retreated and disappeared into the vast sea, and the sea breeze was blowing from a distance. A little bit. At the same time, on the other side of the Grand Line, Sakazuki was on a hunting mission, searching all the way along the sea route, and finally found the trail of the pirates on Nankard Island. Sakazuki dashed to the island and led his men into the area where the pirates were. At this moment, the pirates were burning, killing, and looting, causing flames to ignite in the city. Many people flee in fear, and the place is in a mess. It's Marine Admiral Sakazuki, we are saved. The people who were fleeing saw Sakazuki in the distance and shouted in excitement. In their opinion, the appearance of Sakazuki represented the end of this cholera. All these pirates will be eliminated. Mr. Marine, help. Not far away, there were women comforting the crying child, pointing to Sakazuki who rushed from a distance, full of smoke and scorching heat, about to burst out to catch the pirate. Don't cry, we are safe, the Justice Marine is here. The baby looks at that man is Admiral, the messenger of justice, he. Suddenly, her voice stopped abruptly. Her eyes widened. At this moment, she clearly saw that at the moment when Sakazuki erupted in lava to arrest the pirates, hundreds of ghosts appeared on his body, wrapped around his body, and rushed out with the lava. These ghosts are wailing, flames all over their bodies, and their skin is blackened, like countless people killed by Sakazuki with lava have turned into unjust souls, and they are still haunting Sakazuki after death. In an instant, everyone was sluggish, and even Marine, who was running on the street to catch the pirates, stopped. Some pirates who escaped trial ran very fast, rushed out for a certain distance and then turned their heads and glanced back. Sakazuki, who got up behind him, opened his mouth wide. Wow, the child's immature and scared cry sounded at this moment. Mom, you lie. The child in the woman's arms looked at Sakazuki and cried. Sakazuki sighed. He watched the ghost appearing again, wailing and piercing around his body. This scene made him squint. 807. At the same time, he felt the adjutant's worried gaze, and said low and determined, I'm fine. Sakazuki didn't notice any changes in his body. Although the ghost appeared, his body was not damaged. These entangled souls are close at hand, but they do not harm him at all. In the next moment, his straight face looked at the pirates fleeing in the distance, and there was no hesitation in choosing to continue the arrest. Faced with the ghost that reappears, Sakazuki's choice is to let it go. One of the things he didn't feel dangerous when the ghost appeared, and the second one was that he himself said that he would not give up upholding justice because of the ghost. In the distance, the pirate leader who had escaped for a certain distance looked at Sakazuki sluggishly. At this moment, this Admiral ghost is entangled, and the boiling molten lava on his body contains the unjust ghosts. Wailing. The pirate leader lowered his head unconsciously, watching his clothes stained with bloodline, holding the tip of the dripping knife in his hand, and then raised his head again to look at Sakazuki who was constantly approaching forward. The pirate leader was stunned. Who is the criminal pirate? Eternal hell. The darkness here is very dull and there is no light all year round. After living in this place for a long time, even eyesight will deteriorate. Suddenly, a happy laugh sounded, extremely clear in the darkness. The pirates in the cell heard the voice, and they all looked at a corner in the dark. It was a wooden house that was completely different from the prison's painting style, standing quietly in the cage group, and at this moment, there was cheerful laughter in the wooden house. Inside the house, Luo Wen burst into laughter. Ding. Kuzan is scared, scared point +5. Ding. Shanks is scared, scared point +5. Ding. Sakazuki is frightened, startle point +5. Ding. Pirate leader. All kinds of prompts are constantly sounding, and they are all scared. Through the eyes of burnt ghosts and water ghosts, Luo Wen saw the performance of two admirals from Grand Line and New World, Sakazuki and Kuzan. Withdraw his distant gaze. From now on, Sakazuki attacks will have their own AoE special effects. The corners of Luo Wen's mouth were raised, her eyes were bright, and she thought of something very interesting. In the future, he intends to let the burning ghost and the water ghost possess them for a long time. Sakazuki shot with AoE special effects, and a large number of ghosts screamed above the magma tumbling. On the Kuzan side, a water ghost occasionally pops up when fighting with people, and comes with 2 heads and 4 arms to help Kuzan stab the enemy, help him kill the enemy. Chapter 76 Its birthday, everyone has a share, happy. Advertise here. Luo Wen was laughing at eternal hell. The people outside cannot be calm. At the same time, in different locations, 2 sea areas in New World. Although Kuzan and Sakazuki are not together at this time, they have very similar actions. They are both standing on the warship, facing the vast sea, they are silent. 2 full hours have passed since they met Shanks and the pirates who broke into the town. Kuzan was silent, his eyes flickering. The ghost ship still failed to be found in the end, and disappeared at the end of the endless sea, but this was actually not important anymore. He has discovered one thing: as long as he does it himself, the water ghost will appear. This is just like an alternative special effect, and sometimes the water ghost stretches out his hand from him and touches the head of red hair pirates. In this scene, Kuzan had a headache. He can't control the water ghost in his body at all, really only ghosts know what this ghost will do. At this moment, Kuzan and Sakazuki, who hadn't met in different places, uttered the same sentence in unison. Go to the head office and tell Marshal Sengoku that the ghost is coming out of me. Headquarters. Sengoku was sitting at his desk with a hung-up phone worm in front of him. He watched the phone worm silently and was silent for a long time. What the hell is going on? Sengoku rubbed his eyebrows, he sighed and looked at Garp, who walked in from the door. During this time, Garp ran back and forth between the new G1 and Marineford, arranging some things at both ends. This time he returned to the headquarters to hear the call. The ghosts on them don't seem to be bad for them, but they are good. Garp laughed. Sakazuki is already fierce, it will look even more fierce and scary. Sengoku flipped Byakugan, you are still in the mood to make a joke. He had to admire Garp's God-tier sutra. Now this situation is causing him a headache. Both admirals' bodies are susceptible to ghosts. Later, when they arrested the pirates, such a ghost appeared on their bodies. This is outside. Do people really seem to be the just marine? Sengoku felt very powerless here. Although there is a research institute dedicated to ghosts, it has only just started, and there is still a long way to go. At least temporarily, it is helpless. However, there is at least some good news. At least the ghosts didn't seem to cause them any harm. Sengoku thought of having fun. But should it be headache or headache, should it be uncomfortable or uncomfortable, Marine Admiral shouldn't be such an image. While Sengoku was stern, Garp said abruptly. His birthday is today, right? In an instant, Sengoku discarded all the thoughts in his mind, raised his head to look at Garp, and his pupils suddenly shrank. At the same time, eternal hell, Luo Wen in the wooden house was busy taking out the freshly baked small cakes in front of the oven. With a smile on his face, he put the little cakes in a special basket, full of them. He intends to send some small cakes to the neighbors. Isn't this my birthday? It also gives everyone joy and joy. Squeak. Luo Wen hummed a little song, carrying the basket with one hand, and pushing open the small wooden door of his house. At the moment the door opened, many eyes outside the cell looked over. Give everyone some snacks. Luo Wen smiled and carried the basket. In front of the cages, he put down the little cakes that had just been baked and were still steaming, and by the way, he greeted the prisoners in the cages for snacks. The sun came out from the west today. Someone was surprised in the dark. It was surprising that Luo Wen would give them small snacks. On weekdays, there is no such good welfare. Luo Wen eats alone by himself. It's delicious. Luo Wen, did you make the cake yourself? Someone reached out from the iron railing, grabbed the cake and gobbled up his eyes. Forget it, I still don't eat it. Luo Wen is too weird. In case someone puts some ingredients in the cake, some people look at the cake at the door and swallow, but they still didn't dare to reach out and take it. The guy who is afraid of death, Luo Wen really wants to kill you. You were dead a long time ago. Do you still need this? If you don't eat it, I will eat it. A hand stretched out next to him, snatching the cake and stuffing it into his mouth. After eating, she asked Luo Wen loudly if she had any more. In the chaos, Luo Wen carried the basket and walked towards the dark depths of eternal hell. He stopped in front of Letterfield's cell. Today for my birthday, please ask my neighbor to eat cake. Luo Wen smiled and took out a small cake from the basket and put it behind the iron railing. Letterfield was bound by chains, basically there was no room for movement, so Luo Wen was very much intimately put some of the cake inside. How many years have I not eaten this kind of decent food? A pair of scarlet eyes lit up in the dark, and a smile appeared on his old face. Hey ha, neighbor. He opened his mouth and ate the little cake that Luo Wen handed over in one bite, enjoying the fragrance blooming in his mouth. Just for your little cake, if I have a chance to go out in the future, I owe you a favor. Letterfield looked deeply at Luo Wen outside the iron railings, and then turned around, and said in an elegant and gentleman manner, Happy birthday. Thanks a lot. Luo Wen grinned, put down another cake, and then walked in another direction in the dark. After walking a few steps, he stopped and looked at the old man in the cage. The old man has long blonde hair, his legs are missing, his trouser legs are empty, and he looks embarrassed. It turns out that you are here. The legendary flying pirate also gave you a small cake. I wish myself a happy birthday. Everyone has fun. Luo Wen took out a cake, put it in front of the cage, and smiled. I know you, Luo Wen. The golden lion in the cage suddenly opened his eyes, looked at Luo Wen outside the iron railing, and laughed ambitiously. You let Bullet out before, right? How about letting me out too? We can join hands, even if I am your subordinate, it's okay. Mr. Flying Pirate, after you die and become a ghost, I can consider it. Luo Wen smiled and shook his head. He didn't say much, put down the cake and left. Luo Wen walked in the direction of the exit, his body changed into nothingness as he walked, like a ghost walking silently here, and at the same time he whispered to himself with a thoughtful whisper. The neighbors in the prison have basically been sent to everyone, but there are a few neighbors in other places that should not be forgotten. A little time. The guard room on the 6th floor. At this time, the guards are strictly controlling the situation on the 6th floor, and they are fully focused on guarding the passage of the 6th floor. If there is a situation on the 6th floor, the alarm will be triggered at the first time. Suddenly, a hand appeared from the ceiling, and disappeared without a trace after putting down a piece of cake. At the same time, a male voice sounded. Today, for my birthday, I will send you cakes, and I will be happy. What? The guard was startled, and subconsciously thought that something was wrong with the alarm, but suddenly reacted in the next second, and then the corners of his mouth twitched. Is that Luo Wen? Absolutely. This guy is out again. The guard who was going to pull the alarm froze in midair, and didn't know if it should fall. After a while, he sighed, picked up the phone worm and dialed Magellan. Director. The other side. On the 4th floor, Magellan visited the toilet door several times a day. What did you say? Luo Wen came out again. What? I'm fine here, I just want to pull it out soon. From time to time in the closed toilet door, the sound of men calling and heavy humming sounded, like fighting something and sawing. A transparent hand protruded from the wall next to it, and then a head came out, and then a basket with cakes appeared. It seems that Magellan is very painful today. Luo Wen looked at the sound coming from the toilet and couldn't help but shook his head and laughed. When he walked into Magellan's office, he put down a piece of cake and disappeared without a trace. The 5th floor. Hannibal was going to be lazy again, pretending that he was walking, and ran to the monitoring room to drink tea in an open manner. Just after taking a bite, a hand stretched out from beside his head. Hot, hot, hot. Hannibal knocked over the tea in surprise, and came directly to a hot pants stall. What was that stuff just now? Hannibal stood up abruptly, and while patted his crotch to dissipate heat, he looked at the wall with a hand outstretched suspiciously. He didn't make a mistake just now, definitely a hand stretched out from the wall. And what else seems to be left? Hannibal followed his gaze, and unexpectedly there was a little steaming cake on the table, and there was a small card beside it. Hannibal stepped forward, picked up the note, and read the text on it. Today's birthday, I will give you a small cake made by yourself. Everyone has a share. Luo Wen left. That was Luo Wen just now. Hannibal was not surprised now, and his hanging heart was relieved. He thought there was a new ghost in the prison. The guard in the monitoring room leaned over and said with lingering fear, Deputy Director, I don't think this cake can be done. Deputy Director, why are you eating it down? The guard stared wide-eyed and looked at Hannibal in amazement, who had already taken a bite of the cake. What Luo Wen gave me, can this be eaten directly? Hannibal took a bite, his eyes glowing, yeah, it's delicious. As he said, he stuffed the whole cake in, and muttered vaguely, "Muh." Because his mouth was full, Hannibal talked as if bored, but the guard still barely heard what Hannibal meant. Luo Wen really wants to kill me. I don't need this kind of cake. Although I don't want to admit it, I have to say, that guy killed me very quickly. Wow, this cake is so delicious. Hannibal had already swallowed all the cake in his mouth at this time. Gulu, have you received this cake? Give it to me if you don't eat it. Hear the words. The guard's eyes widened, dumbfounded. Luo Wen finished scattering the little cakes, carrying the empty basket, and returning to her cabin. Ding. Letterfield is scared, scared point +5. Ding. Hannibal is scared, scared +1. Open black lens bracket ding. I'm surprised because the little cakes are delicious, do I still count them? Luo Wen was surprised, but it was reasonable to think about it again. This should be regarded as a kind of surprise mood swing. Putting down the empty basket, Luo Wen seemed to think of something suddenly, and a whisper came from her mouth. By the way, my birthday is here, and Bullet should be back. The voice sounded at the same time. Luo Wen stretched out his hand to the void. Bullet, go home. Sabayati Archipelago. Bullet was walking on the road, and Yu Guang glanced at the gift shop on the side of the street, which stopped his steps, and after a little hesitation, he walked in. After a while, Bullet walked out again, and there was an extra story book in his hand. The story book was exquisitely packaged and placed in a small bag. Suddenly, Bullet didn't take 2 steps, but stopped again, looking in a direction to his side. At that position, a marine justice coat was flying, and the people came down from the roof, turning into a yellow flash, seeming to be walking slowly, but came to Bullet in the blink of an eye. Oh, it took me a long time to find you. Poor Salino has one hand in his trouser pocket, and looks like a decadent uncle who just got off work. His eyes under the sunglasses are scanning up and down to look at Bullet, his mouth is slightly opened, making an exaggerated expression of surprise. Really, it's Bullet, the supernova of the Roger Pirates. Not for better storytelling. First killed Marine a long time ago. Bullet squinted his eyes, and his burly body gave a huge oppressive force. In order not to destroy what Luo Wen explained, he still left Marine after all. Otherwise, the Admiral in front of him would not be able to find him so quickly. How did you come out? How did that Luo Wen do it? Pelusalino was curious. He hadn't really met Luo Wen, but heard a lot about Luo Wen. At first, after knowing that Bullet was sent by Luo Wen, even he couldn't help being surprised. What is this method? Can send people out of prison without disturbing the defensive power in Impel Down. In Impel Down, where there are sea stones everywhere, even the devil fruit ability that involves space can't be done. Forget it, let's not talk about it. I have been urging me to go to the New World Golden City. I have been here for too long. The people above have opinions. Pelusilino has not waited for Bullet to answer. Shook his head. Next moment, there was red light flashing in his eyes under his sunglasses, and the moment observation hockey turned on, his right leg turned into a streamer toward Bullet Rui. Bullet stood still, his right arm raised, covered in pitch black armed color, like a majestic mountain. Just like that, it shook Pelusilino's strike. Boom. The terrifying power was surging, and the ground under the feet of the two quickly broke, and the strong air wave made it a storm field. The surrounding stalls were overturned, and some people even fell to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The collision re-emerges, the bullet is fully fired, and Conquerors is like a furious wave, rushing to all directions, and the weak will be suppressed if they touch it. Many Marines who came from behind all fell to the ground as a result, and there was no room for struggle. Poor Salino shot at the same time, the golden streamer flashed vertically and horizontally through the sky and the underground, constantly colliding with Bullet. They even hit a sonic boom, the air exploded in the hands of the two, and the vacuum zone appeared one after another. This kind of movement is too amazing. Even in the sea area outside the Sabayati archipelago, it can be clearly seen, making people feel shocked, so they exclaimed. Boom. The movement continued to erupt, as if an earthquake appeared in Sabayati archipelago. More and more people were alarmed, and even the supernovas who stayed, Money Jiao, in Sabayati archipelago were also shaken by this. They knew from the surrounding population that the burly man who was colliding with Marine Admiral was the descendant of the devil on Roger's ship, Bullet. World politics is really ill. This man was imprisoned very early, and now he is released. Is he escaped? Kid and Kira were standing 100 meters away from the collision center, staring at him. The collision ahead. Before the fight, I heard they mentioned a person, Luo Wen. Kira was puzzled, he hadn't heard the name. When is there such a person on the sea, someone who makes Admiral pay attention? And on the other side, Bonnie also saw this scene. It turns out that he is Bullet. Bonnie's pupils diminished, no wonder he has such strength, even the fellow Hawkins would be scared off. Luo Wen again. At the same time, Bonnie frowned and heard the name again, this time from an admiral. The wanted order she saw at the time appeared unconsciously in her mind. Is that person really Luo Wen? A reward of 30 million yuan. This is not right, or is there any secret in it? Bonnie thought. On the other side, in the alley, Hawkins held a tarot card in his hand, his face changed again and again. Sure enough, it was him. Hawkins narrowed his eyes. At this moment, he finally remembered why he felt familiar when he met Bullet last time. When I was young, I had seen his wanted warrant. Luo Wen helped Bullet escape from prison. Hawkins frowned. He heard a few words and couldn't help thinking. Suddenly, Hawkins' pupils shrank, and he saw that a hand appeared on Bullet's shoulder without warning. You doctor is pale, exuding a kind of chill, which makes people feel horrified. At this moment, not only he saw it, but everyone around who was watching the battle saw it. That is, poor Salino's pupils shrank suddenly. The gaze fell tightly on the pale arm. And at the same time, he heard a voice, coming out of nothingness, and echoing here faintly. Bullet, you can go home. Chapter 77. Today's food is very rich, leaving you a sheep's life. Advertise here. Bullet, go home. The voice echoed. The moment when the pale and rugged arm fell, it lightly touched Bullet's shoulder. Hum. The space was distorted in an instant. Bullet disappeared, completely gone. Quote question mark question mark question mark. Quote. This scene horrified everyone who was paying attention to this side, and people disappeared in broad daylight. Could it be that the demon fruit power of space made the shot? But the arm just now is really a human hand. Too many people are dumbfounded and don't understand what happened just now. The opponent in front of Pelusilino disappeared. This method was too weird, even he couldn't stop it. Iya, is that Luo Wen? Although he said with a smile, his eyes under the sunglasses flickered. Poor Salino's figure flickered and turned into a streamer, and when he arrived at the position where Bullet had just stood, he could feel the cold air around him a little bit, which made people get goosebumps. Bullet is really gone. Poor Salino has red glow in the pupils of his eyes. He is always observing in the middle of the eye, and he can be sure that Bullet has really disappeared instead of hiding in some other way. At this moment, several spatial devil fruits appeared in Pelusilino's mind, such as the door fruit in the CP organization, and the mirrored fruit of the ant pirates. If it is facing these two fruit abilities, he is confident to stop Bullet before being sent away. But the situation just now is different. Luo Wen's ability is very different from them. The instant movement at that speed makes it difficult for sparkling fruit to stop. Thinking of this, the eyes under Pelusilino's sunglasses flickered, and his expression changed. Sir Pelusilino. At this time, Marine rushed over from behind, and they could only get close when the fighting stopped. In the situation just now, they couldn't even get close to the center of the collision. I know a little bit now, why Marshal Sengoku is so helpless with Luo Wen. Marine who rushed over heard the sound, and they followed the source of the sound, only to find that Pelusilino had turned and left, leaving them aback. Go, Bullet won't be in Sabayati's land anymore. Poor Salino waved his hand. That guy just wanted to tell a story, and he didn't plan to do it with us at all. Otherwise, according to the character of the descendant of the devil who stirred the sea back then, he would have been killing him, and he won't wait until now. We found him. By the way, go and talk to Marshal Sengoku. I set off for New World. I also told Marshal Sengoku that Luo Wen took bar 807 away. I couldn't chase him. Pelusolino walked towards the distance, and in the tone of the decadent uncle after work, there was a kind of heaviness that was hard to find. Eternal hell. There was a flower in front of Bullet, and the familiar feeling of weightlessness and dizziness, followed by darkness. Open your eyes again. Looking at Luo Wen who was smiling and looking at him in front of him, Bullet knew that he had returned to eternal hell again. I'm back again. Bullet was about to sigh, but when he saw the surroundings, his words kept getting longer. What I am facing is not a cold cell and iron railings, but a room. Or a room. Bullet was stunned. At this moment, he noticed that in the kitchen, there was a grim and pale woman tumbling a walk, with flames rising out of the action. Bullet. The corners of his mouth twitched, this female ghost that you haven't seen before. However, Bullet didn't care too much. He already knew how many ex-girlfriends Luo Wen had around him. There are already 2 women in white clothes, black hair and slit mouths. Now that there is one more, he has no surprises, not surprising in number. Bullet didn't care about these issues. He is thinking about a question now: is he really back to eternal hell? He stepped forward and walked to the window to look outside. At this look, Bullet's eyelids throbbed, and he was silent again. The windows are dark, and the cells are side by side. You can still vaguely see the familiar inmates who are locked by the shackles. Where is this not eternal hell? In other words, Luo Wen made a house in eternal hell. Your approach is a bit outrageous. Bullet turned his head to look at Luo Wen, and finally couldn't help saying this. Hear the words. Luo Wen smiled unchanged, did not answer Bullet's words, but looked at a bag tied around his waist. Upon seeing this, his eyes widened, he stood up pretending to be surprised. Oh, is this your birthday present for me? Bullet looked at Luo Wen, who was obviously acting, wanted to say something but didn't say anything after all. He is now a little accustomed to the strange behavior that Luo Wen, a mysterious and powerful person, occasionally likes to perform. This is Luo Wen's character. Bullet untied the tied bag, took it out and brought it in front of Luo Wen. After a short pause, he said, "Happy birthday." Thank you. Luo Wen smiled and took the bag, took out the storybook inside, raised his eyebrows slightly. The title of the book is a wonderful story that you don't know about. Grand line. He looked at Bullet, who was addicted to storytelling, and joked, "Did you buy Bullet for me, or did you buy it for yourself?" Quote. Bullet almost didn't stretch. Well, he admitted that when he bought it, he did think this book was quite interesting. Stay, and have my birthday banquet together. Luo Wen looked at the dull gourd like Bullet, and sent out an invitation again with a smile. Hear the words. Bullet looked at Jaya in the kitchen after he was busy, and then didn't think much about it, shook his head and refused. He has a feeling. Once the birthday is celebrated, there will be no ghosts in this room that he can't think of, and there will be a lot of ghosts in this room, it will become a ghost banquet. Bullet doesn't want to see such a gloomy and infiltrating picture, he thinks it is better to go back and exercise. Watching Bullet leave, Luo Wen didn't feel surprised, because his neighbor has such a dull personality. He shook his head, picked up the book Bullet gave him and read it. The first story is so maddening that the saved fox turns into a human form to repay his favor. Bullet left the cabin and walked to his cell. This picture really surprised the prisoners in the cages on both sides, and the Bullet who left came back quietly. And he hasn't worn a prison uniform yet, so obviously he has really gone out. Someone yelled in the dark and asked Bullet to help open the door and escape from prison. However, Bullet didn't respond at all, and didn't even take a look at these people. Go back to his cell. He closed the iron railing door, closed his eyes and fell into a state of meditation, and began a special exercise. Not long after Bullet returned to his cell, eternal hell was visited, and the heavy seastone gate was pushed open from the outside. It's Magellan and Hannibal. The two of them walked in with a group of jailers and looked at the small wooden house standing in the depths. Magellan's eyelids jumped unconsciously. Although he knew this, it was impossible to get used to it when he really saw it. After walking in some distance, Magellan saw an extra figure in the cell where Bullet was originally held. Bullet is back. Sure enough, Magellan whispered in his heart. They came in this time to confirm this. Marine called over and said that Bullet had disappeared again strangely, and there was also a voice that was likely to be Luo Wen's sound, telling, should, going home, kind of words. After confirming that Bullet really came back now, Magellan also felt relieved. He didn't say much, and didn't bother to talk to damn bastards like Eternal Hell, turned around and left after he was sure about it. However, halfway through, Magellan suddenly thought of the little cake she saw on the desk after she finished shit. This made Magellan's footsteps turn and walk towards the door of Luo Wen's cabin. Luo Wen, we can actually be friends and work together. We know part of your handwriting in New World. Magellan didn't knock on the door, nor went in, and said while resting on the wooden door of the cabin. New World Luo Wen has done a lot of time, CGEF, and a large part of it is aimed at pirates. It seems that it is exactly the same as Luo Wen himself originally said that he does not like pirates. That's right. A faint voice came from inside the wooden door. But the premise is that you have nothing to do with the 5 elders who call themselves celestial dragons. I don't like those people. Hear the words. Magellan fell silent. He was resting on the wooden door. His eyes flickered slightly, as if he was looking at Luo Wen, at this moment. I hope you consider my statement, and thank you for the birthday cake. Happy birthday. Magellan finally said such a sentence, then he turned and left, leading Hannibal and others out of eternal hell, never looking back. Inside the room, Luo Wen retracted his gaze looking at the wooden door, then gently shook his head, and continued to read the storybook in his hand. Night comes very quickly. Although in eternal hell, it is not clear between day and night, Luo Wen still feels that there is an atmosphere to celebrate his birthday at night. In the cabin at this time, the temperature was dropping sharply, and the pale and terrifying figures walked out in the dark, really just like bullets guess. The whole house is a ghost. The clown, Kayako, Basha-sama, Hanako, Osada, and Shaosada are all here. The clown smiled silently. He walked up to Luo Wen and prepared a gift for Luo Wen. This gift was very valuable. It was actually a high-end jewelry on the Longbeard 5 Elders ship. Master Bachi was elegant and terrifying. She swayed when she walked, and her heavy chest was trembling. She came to Luo Wen and presented her with an ant's favorite cake. Xiao Junzi also came back from Cake Island, jumped over joyfully, and sat on Luo Wen's lap. She brought something unexpected, since it is the ant's historical stone monument. Hanako prepared a small hand made by herself. It was a small doll, but the stuffing was dead bones, which was terrifying. What surprised Luo Wen the most was Da Junzi. She came back from Naval Headquarters and brought a custom coat from Naval Headquarters. And Sengoku's goat, as this also brought. Luo Wen raised his brows. The goat was terrified now, curled up and bleated, his big eyes were full of fear, as if he was worried that Luo Wen would roast it. It's really the goat that Tenten eats the Sengoku file. Are they all refined? Fortunately, this is not after the founding of the People's Republic of China, otherwise you will be shot. Luo Wen stretched out his hand and rubbed the sheep's head angrily, half-jokingly said, forget it, today's food is very rich, save you a sheep's life. For all the gifts, he accepts them all. In fact, these gifts can be seen that they have taken a lot of effort. He has not forced his cute ghosts to give himself gifts. They all want to celebrate their birthdays from the heart. Although Sadako and the others were once humans, they have been dead for a long time. Now they are ghosts. Their thinking is different from humans. It takes a lot of thought to give a suitable gift. It's birthday, so happy Luo Wen feels very happy now. Ja Coconut's cooking skills are really good, with a large table full of dishes. This celebration came very late. It was not until late at night that Luo Wen blew out the candles on the cake and made a wish. The banquet is over. Luo Wen sent away Junzi and the others, and the wooden house quickly became deserted. No, it can't be said to be deserted. There used to be a lot of ghosts here, but now they are gone, they seem to be more popular. Luo Wen glanced at the scared goat curled up beside him, picked up the A4 paper on the table and threw it into the dog basin in front of the goat. At this time, the entire dog basin is filled with A4 paper. The goat raised his head and glanced at Luo Wen's cry-off-bob, afraid of being scared, and it was not at all polite to eat. Huh, what is called sheep? Outside the wooden house, the prisoners in the cage heard this weird sound, all tilted their heads and listened carefully, wondering if Luo Wen did something strange again. Finish feeding the goats. Luo Wen decided to use the tale of today's birthday to draw another lottery, and by the way, give all these ghosts a boost. During this period of time, he has been exercising, increasing his combat effectiveness by 10 million every day. It can be said that Saitama's physique is quite exaggerated. Ding. Consume 300 scare points to draw ghosts. Ding. Successfully drawn. Get, drunkard. Drunkard. Luo Wen looked at the system panel. Alcoholic. A person who was addicted to alcohol, died suddenly after an excessive drinking, and turned into an alcoholic after death, without alcohol. The picture in front of him flickered, and a fuzzy figure with a big belly appeared, his face was dark and strange, and he hiccuped one after another. How can this be used? Luo Wen narrowed his eyes, not thinking of a good use for the time being. That being the case, he decided to smoke a few more times. Let's have another 3 consecutive draws. Ding. Succeeded in drawing. Get smoke ghost. Ding. Succeeded in drawing. Get unlucky ghost. Ding. Successfully drawn. Get a happy ghost. What kind of trouble is Luo Wen's mouth twitching when he is happy all of a sudden? Fortunately, there is a happy ghost at the end, otherwise the whole bad luck at the end of the birthday will be the end. It is really a bit unlucky. Suddenly, Luo Wen was thinking about it, thinking of the historical text of Xiaojunzi put into the well in the different dimension, and suddenly, by the way, why did I forget? I let Bachi scare the ant, so I didn't go to the ant again. But when I remembered again, Luo Wen didn't take care of it anymore. 4 of you, go to 1. Luo Wen whispered softly, he thought of something else, and assigned the 4 newly drawn ghosts to each. Then, he opened the system panel again. Strengthened the clown to absorb fear. Sadako's space is distorted. Chapter 78 The prelude to the top kicks off, the uninvited guest on the Whitebeard ship. Advertise here. Time is passing, and every day has passed and the current new world will undergo earth-shaking changes. Suddenly, the sky and the earth change. 3 days passed. Cake Island is very unstable now. In the past 10 days or so, the sky above Cake Island has always been covered with thunder and lightning, and there is even more raging fire. This kind of vision is terrifying, and you can know the current Queen Charlotte of Cake Island, Lin Lin's mood very bad. Many people are speculating. Some people say that it is because the haunting has not been resolved. Others say that the horrible schizophrenia is about to occur again. There is also a saying that Lord Bakichi went to the ant but never really showed up, so that the ant did not sleep well for a long period of time. But no matter what the situation is, the ant must be very upset now. Even the residents of Cake Island are considering whether to temporarily move out of Cake Island and live on other islands in IWC Toto land for 2 days. No one knows when the thunder gathering in the sky will fall, which is very frightening. At the same time, the battle over the Rock's ghost broke out, and Admiral Pelusolino was dispatched to collide with the Rock's ghost in the sea somewhere in New World. This is very puzzling. Mingming said before that because the Rock's ghost has offended celestial dragons, 3 Admiral will be dispatched to destroy them, but why is Pelusolino alone? Isn't this the world politics beating himself in the face? But soon a well-informed person explained the reason. Marine's other 2 Admiral, Kuzan and Sakazuki had a problem and were possessed by a ghost. They couldn't move anymore, only Pelusolino led the fleet to collide with the Rock's ghosts. The final result was the sinking of the 3 marine warships and the Rock's ghosts disappearing at the end of the sea. In the past few days, the Revolutionary Army has not been calm, and the command of Napoleon's ghost that has the world's best can play an extremely huge role. The combat ability of the Revolutionary Army has increased exponentially. This makes the CP organization bitterly hateful. As a result, the ghost of Napoleon was trusted by Dragon and others, and was completely regarded as a member of the Revolutionary Army, and has taken the second step of the plan and became a cadre in the Revolutionary Army. The rumor that a ghost cadre came to the army of the revolution spread wildly. Most people doubted this kind of gossip and didn't believe it for the first time. But there are some people who believe in this, because they once saw a vague and transparent horseback figure behind the leather army formation when they were fighting in the leather army. It looked very strange, really like a ghost. There is also one piece of news that makes people very concerned. It can be said that people talk about news after tea and dinner in the past 3 days. 2 of the names are very important. That is Bullet, Luo Wen. The former is the descendant of the devil who once stirred the sea and brought cholera, and recently escaped in Sabayati archipelago by weird means, which directly attracted Admiral's hands. It's hard not to be noticed. The latter's level of attention even far surpasses all the news, rocks, Bullet, Revolutionary Army, etc. All the limelight is suppressed by him. The 2 words Luo Wen have become a hot spot in the past few days. A piece of news is reporting his news. This man named Luo Wen seems to have been noticed by Admiral Pelusolino, and he also rescued people from Pelusolino's nose. This method is too terrible. Few people in the world can do it. The ghost hand on the shoulder of Bullet was also photographed by someone with a heart, and was purchased by the World News Economic Agency at a high price and published in the latest issue of the newspaper. Many people have seen the photo. The arm is dry and pale. Even if you just look at the photo, it makes people feel uncomfortable. Many people are guessing and have already confirmed that the owner of this arm is Pelusolino Admiral Luo Wen. Because Pelusolino clearly stated that Luo Wen brought Bullet out of Impel down, and only those who have such a method can send Bullet away again. The speculation about Luo Wen is also circulated in secret, and several versions have appeared respectively, but none of them can provide definite evidence, and some of the claims are just personal conjectures. It is precisely because of Luo Wen's rumors that there are so many rumors that during this period of time, Sabayati archipelago actually appeared a lot of Luo Wen's pretenders. They said that they were Luo Wen in the news, and wanted to be famous for it, even for profit. And in these few days, 2 pretenders have died bizarrely. After they died, there was a videotape beside them. Their mouths were cut open, as if they were smiling when they were dead. This inexplicable method of death is very scary. For a while, no one dares to pretend to be Luo Wen. Those who once patted their chests and said that they are Luo Wen also disappeared one by one. At the same time, this deepened Luo Wen's mystery and made more people discuss his affairs. The storm is sweeping. Even marine and world politics cannot be calm. Within these few days, there was special news in the Holy Land. They decided to move. The monastery had no way to deal with it. Many people who entered were dead. The power of ghosts seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. If this goes on, the Holy Land will be bloody. The new sacred place has been reported, and it is still ready to be on the red line, but the specific location is still being sought and has not yet been finalized. At the same time, 5 elders also made a decision and communicated it to Marine. Sengoku's complexion changed noticeably after learning of this command. But he calmed down quickly, because 5 elders' orders were actually just to make him act according to the original plan, and he had already anticipated all this. Ace's execution. Sengoku lowered his head and looked at the order document sent to his desk. He understood the purpose of 5 elders. Through the execution of Roger's son, the son of the devil, to declare the world's political status is unshakable, still above the pirates, and has absolute dominance over the entire world. At the same time, this is also a cover for the move of the Holy Land and the Naval Headquarters, and the execution of Ace will suppress these, in disguised form. Branu stood in front of Sengoku, and he sent this document just now. Marshal Sengoku, are we acting according to the original plan? Or are we going to change the place of execution to the new G1 side? Hear the words. Sengoku was stunned. He then suddenly reacted that the Naval Headquarters is going to be relocated. The current Marineford, and the new G1 branch, really don't know where the headquarters is. After Sengoku was silent for a moment, he raised his head and looked at Branu. It's at Marineford. After a short pause, he waved, go and announce the news. Yes. Branu nodded and went to do it at once. Soon. With Marineford as the starting point, this news spread to all parts of the world at a storm-like speed. Newspaper birds danced in the clouds and scattered newspapers to every corner. The fourth day. The early morning sun was warm, shimmering the sea. The Moby Dick, which looked like a whale, slowly sailed in this sea area, letting the shining surface of the sea be separated, and the silver-white waves rubbed the sides of the hull. The members of the Whitebeard pirates yawned and walked out. Marco scratched his loose hair like a bird's nest and turned his head to look in the direction of the cabin. I saw Whitebeard walking out of the shadows, with a huge body and a medical instrument tube in his upper body. Daddy, you should sleep a little longer. Marco smiled at Whitebeard, and behind this smile there was a subtle worry. The old man's body is getting worse every day. Marco sighed in his heart. Gula lala, it's okay, my body is not so fragile. Whitebeard's voice is Shen Yu, looking at Marco who was concerned about him, grinning and shaking his head. Suddenly, Whitebeard's movement stopped, as if he had sensed something. His gaze was looking in the direction of the bow at this moment. I don't know when, a skinny old man who no one knows sat there, smoking a cigarette on his own, swallowing a lot of smoke, covering the old man's body. But faintly through the sunlight, it can be found that the old man's body tends to be translucent. Whitebeard's eyes flickered. At this time, many people found this figure, all with doubts in their eyes. However, he was only puzzled by the old man who came suddenly. No one was worried about it. You should know that this is the Whitebeard pirates. Even if other royal pirates arrive, they can't be frightened. Marco stood up and asked from the back of the old smoking man, who is your excellency, what's the matter with me, the Whitebeard pirates? His eyes flickered, and such a person suddenly appeared, making people confused. However, the old smoking man was indifferent to Marco's question, as if he hadn't heard it. Marco raised his eyebrows and asked again, but the result was still the same. The old smoker only cared about his own smoking, and didn't mean to answer. This made the members of the Whitebeard pirates frown and felt unhappy. Just leave it uninvited, and ignore their questions. Boom. Diamond Joe's walked up, raised a pair of fists, and hit the old smoking man directly. But, this punch seemed to hit the phantom illusion, and went straight through. The old man was still smoking, and there was no other reaction. Is it the same thing as the sea floor? Joe's was surprised. This fist fell out, which was beyond his expectation. This is very staggering. When they are sailing, they occasionally encounter a landscape like a mirage, but it is impossible for them to move with the boat like this. Marco scratched his hair, his sleepy eyes widened slightly, and he watched the old smoking man without speaking for a long time. This bizarre scene caused other people to look at each other one after another. All of them were astonished when they saw each other's eyes. Several hours passed. The sun climbed to the top of the sky, symbolizing the arrival of noon. The Whitebeard pirate group is also open. There are several large tables on the deck of Nuo Da. Everyone is holding bowls and taking 2 bites of rice. From time to time, they turn to look in the direction of the bow and smoke. Do not move. Look for flowers. In the past few hours, the people of the Whitebeard pirates have tried many methods, but they couldn't make the old smoking man disappear. Marco and the others discovered one thing. This old smoking man is really not like a person, but like a shadow, or something like a projection lamp. He was clearly sitting at the bow of the ship, but he couldn't touch it, hit it, or touch it at all. Marco held the bowl and sat at the dinner table. He hadn't moved his chopsticks for a long time. In the end he could only shake his head and smile. What is this? After speaking, Marco pulled 2 mouthfuls of rice and muttered softly, who is this kidding us? At this moment, someone on the deck spoke, and everyone heard the voice, is that a ghost? Moment. Everyone's eyebrows jumped, and they all looked at the speaker. It was the captain of the 16th squad, Izu. For a while, everyone's expressions were very strange, and they looked at Yizo who was talking silently. Don't look at me like that, I just guessed it. You don't know the latest newspaper. Yizo shrugged his shoulders, guessing casually. But that's a guess. Make Marco stunned. He has thoughts surging in his heart, can't touch, and appear in a weird way. This is really in line with the ghosts mentioned in the recent newspapers. Marco thought of this, and looked at the old man subconsciously. At this time, Whitebeard was also stunned for a while because of Yi Zhang's words, but he quickly reacted and took a sip from the large drinking bowl. Gula la la la. It's really possible, it seems that we are on the boat. A funny ghost guessed. Point 0. As he said, Whitebeard looked deeply at the old smoking man who was sitting still on the bow. Marco thoughtfully, and then reminded the crew to pay more attention to the movement of the old smoking man. However, Even if this old smoking man is really a ghost, none of the people present would be afraid. This is the territory of the Whitebeard pirate group, and no one can be admired, even if it is a ghost. Where's the wine? Suddenly, Joe's yelled. He held a wine jar and raised it above his head, with his mouth facing the mouth of the wine jar, but after a long time he poured a drop or two of wine. I'll get some in the cabin. Someone stood up, patted his butt, and planned to go in the cabin to get some wine out. He returned quickly, with a strange expression on his face, and told everyone that an uninvited guest had also arrived in the cabin and drank all the wine in the cabin. And it's as weird as the old smoking man, visible but intangible, just like an illusion. No, another one, and drank all the wine. Jaws's eyelids jumped wildly. Compared to another ghost-like person, he cared more about being out of alcohol. This is for the lives of people like them. How can you withstand the boring life on the sea without alcohol as a company? The two uninvited guests really left them speechless, tried countless ways, used armed sex, and conquerors used it, but they couldn't be touched, and they couldn't be driven away. It's okay here. Marco looked at the old smoker on the bow, his mouth twitched slightly. Although there was something like this on the bow, it looked weird, but after a few hours, the old smoker just smoked himself. They are all used to doing nothing else. But the guy in the cabin is different. Now Beasta is past, talking to the drinking ghost, trying to persuade the thing. According to the drinking speed of that ghost thing, it is almost faster than the people in the boat. Even if you add a little wine halfway now, I am afraid that you will be drunk in seconds. What can I do? Marco was helpless. Although he didn't like to drink very much, he knew that it was precious without drinking. It has only been a few hours without alcohol, and he always feels a little awkward, and his mouth is dry. At the same time, Marco fell into deep thought. Are they real ghosts? Or is it someone's means, and for what purpose? Here. At this moment, a bird's song rang in the sky, interrupting Marco's thoughts, and at the same time a newspaper fell. Marco stretched out his hand and caught the falling newspaper. After reading the content on it, his expression changed. He turned his head abruptly and looked at the old man who was sitting on the steps, drinking a little bit of wine. Daddy, Ace was caught by Marine. They are going to be executed publicly at Marineford Ace. The moment this sentence was spoken, the entire deck of the mobike shook slightly in an instant. Everyone had a meal and a drink, and their eyes all looked towards one place. And in that direction, Kang is old and old, but still has a figure with terrifying power, is standing up little by little, its wide back, even the sun seems to be able to cover it. There is a terrible breath surging through Whitebeard's body, and he looks at the newspaper in Marco's hand. 100 million. Chapter 79 Kaido fell on the ground, bad luck. Advertise here. At the same time that the news that Ace was about to be executed publicly spread throughout New World. Dressrosa, in the King's Heights. Doflamingo was sitting under the parasol, his face was ugly at the moment. During this period of time, members of the Don Quidditch family disappeared one after another, and there were also missing persons in the kingdom, and these people had some strange and weird behaviors before they disappeared. For example, Torapal, who disappeared at that time, went to drink the water of bubble worms, or for example, someone who eats earthworms in life, and the bitten earthworms got out of their nostrils without paying attention. Others will eat the dirty soil, the stones in the soil will crack their teeth, and their mouth will be full of blood without realizing it. Those who have been taken away and disappeared will see the little girl in red in the dream, the ghost will speak in the dream, bewitching people's hearts. If they want to come back, they must say the name of a loved one and replace it with a loved one own. For this reason, Torapal returned. He said Diamante's name, made a deal with the little girl in red, walked out of the mountains and returned to reality. Torapal, who returned to the King's Heights, regretted it. If time can come back, he will definitely not let Diamante disappear in his place. There are more than a dozen such cases in the kingdom. No one wanted to die. These more than a dozen people followed this method, and after they came back, everyone was cold-blooded, and no one felt regretful. The only regret is Torapal, and even now he is blaming himself, thinking that he has harmed Diamante. Rumors of haunting spread quietly from these people who disappeared and returned. Now almost everyone knows that there is a little girl in red in the whole city. It is said that if she is found by her, August 10, her body will be out of control after a period of time, some very strange behavior will be performed, and it will disappear in one night. Unrest spreads throughout the kingdom. It's scary. No one wants to encounter it. However, there is another rumor that these people who disappeared are all guilty, and the female ghost is punishing the bad guys. This also makes many people of poor character uneasy, and some people are afraid to go out and shrink at home and wait for the limelight to pass. Doflamingo knew all these things. He wanted to suppress the spread of haunted news in the kingdom, but he failed in the end. There were more and more missing people, and it was impossible to hide it. At this time, Doflamingo had a sullen face and looked at Torapal who was sitting not far away. Now Torapal looked sluggish, sitting in a chair like an old man with dementia. He was found by the little girl in red again. The second time. Even if Torapal called out Diamante's name and replaced herself, the little girl in red didn't seem to want to let Torapal go, and once again pestered him a few days ago. Seeing this scene, Doflamingo's face became more ugly. After taking a deep breath, he looked at Pika next to him. Is he here? What Doflamingo calls him is the Four Emperors Kaido who secretly cooperates with him. Doflamingo pleased Kaido and let him help exorcise ghosts. Originally, Doflamingo was going to contact the world politics and wanted to cooperate to solve the ghosts in the kingdom. However, after knowing that there is another ghost on Doflamingo's side, the Holy Land directly put forward conditions to Doflamingo, and some of them even were make it clear to restrain Doflamingo. After Doflamingo heard these conditions, he almost smashed the phone bugs. He was not a fool. He instantly understood that this was the world politics and knew that he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to eat a bite of meat. At the same time, Doflamingo also heard some words. The Holy Land may also be jealous of the newly appearing ghosts here, and he is not very willing to enter Zhao Hunshui. No matter what, Doflamingo hung up the phone decisively and turned around to contact Kaido. And now Kaido should leave, he is almost here. He's coming. Pika nodded, her voice very high-pitched. Just as his voice fell, the gate of King's Highland Palace was pushed open from the outside. A tall, hill-like figure walked in, and as he appeared, the sunlight at the door was blocked, and there was a big shadow under the wine. It is now Kaido, one of the four emperors in the second half of the Grand Line. Joker, are you haunted here too? He said as soon as he came in. Beside Kaido, the second in charge of Beast's pirates, who is completely dark and has wings behind his back, also came. Yeah, Doflamingo looked at Kaido, nodded slightly, and said the haunted thing in Dressrosa. Ha 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 ha, it's funny. Kaido laughed at the words, his laughter was dull, like a thunderous sound, is that you were stared at by that ghost. I will help you fix it. I really want to see what the ghost is that is turning New World upside down now. That's great. Kaido heard about the haunting and got a lot of information from Morgans. Even Linlin didn't seem to be able to solve it. Even the Naval Headquarters couldn't solve the haunting. This made him very interested. Therefore, after hearing Doflamingo's request for help, he came out of Wano-kuni as soon as possible, just to see it. Boss Kaido, don't take it lightly. Jin looked at it and reminded aloud. The boss's personality made him helpless. The boss himself is a god-tier scripture, or he doesn't care about death, and now he has a strong interest in ghosts, and he can't help but persuade him to cover Zhao Hunshui. If you change to Jin himself, you definitely don't want to come and take the initiative to contact ghosts. It's not that you are afraid of ghosts, but you don't want to take the initiative to make trouble for yourself. Only after the information is contacted. But Boss Kaido wouldn't be like this, he just came over with such a big thorn. I know. Kaido grinned and nodded, indicating that he would be careful. Jin sighed in his heart, and he didn't know if the boss listened. Seeing people are coming, Doflamingo began to arrange a series of plans to deal with ghosts. Night fell. At this time, the lights in the palace of the King's Highland were turned off, and Toripal, who was obviously in a mental state, was lying on the bed and snoring. Outside the palace, several figures can be seen looming, Kaido, Jin, and Doflamingo hiding in the dark, waiting for the strange fermentation and the moment when the haunted reel comes. Isn't here yet. Kaido frowned. He waited for a long time, but everything in the room was normal, no weirdness appeared, and Toripal's grunt was getting louder and louder. But at this time, Toripal's purring suddenly stopped, and he sat up from the bed inexplicably, just as he had disappeared when he walked out of the palace last time. He opened the door and walked out towards the dark forest. Secretly, Kaido, Jin, and Doflamingo hibernated, did not start to scare the snake, kept a distance, and followed Toripal into the mountains. And just as Toripal walked into the mountains, a red light flashed in Kaido's pupils, observation hockey opened, and a little red appeared vaguely. It was a dirty little girl, standing strangely and silently in the darkness behind Toripal, silently watching Toripal. Without any hesitation, Doflamingo rushed out. Seeing this ghost again, the ghost that messed up Dressrosa. Moment. The little girl in the red dress raised her head, her eyes were pale and dead, and her eyes were white, which was very permeating. Doflamingo met these ghost eyes, his eyes sharpened suddenly, his fingers were lifted and the thin lines trembling, flashing across the dark. Boom. The thin line cut the air, penetrated the body of the little girl in red, and shattered the rock behind her. The ghost disappeared strangely. When it appeared again, it was under a tree, and the moonlight shone through her body. Leave a shadow on the ground. Doflamingo wants to take another shot. The dark armor color covers the thin lines, which looks heavy and full of murderous intent. However, in the next second, Doflamingo's eyes suddenly shrank, and the scene in front of him made the thin lines flying between his fingers stagnate for a while. In the darkness, another ghost appeared and stood silently beside the little girl in red. There is another one. Doflamingo changed his color instantly. He only knew that there was a ghost in the kingdom, a little girl in red, and he didn't know that there was another ghost at all. The newly appearing ghost is also a child, with a black face and a musty smell on his body, which makes people feel uncomfortable after smelling it and want to vomit. The moldy kid yelled, "Wow," and rushed towards Kaido's location, but he actually fell to the ground in the middle of the journey, looking very clumsy. Looking for death. Kaido's eyes widened, his mace raised and lowered. Boom. The moldy kid who fell to the ground turned into blue smoke on the spot, as if his soul was scattered. Kaido snorted coldly, shook his arm, and walked towards the little girl in red. Unbearable, you are next. The voice stopped abruptly. Kaido, who was walking, suddenly tripped his left and right feet, tilted his body and smashed his face toward the ground. Boom. Without any hindrance, Kaido fell flat on his own and fell to the ground sturdily. Kaido touched his face on the ground and directly crushed a rock on the ground with Hisachiki. Under the moonlight, everyone was stunned. Even Kaido himself was stunned. He got up from the ground and looked at his legs. At that moment, he suddenly felt that his legs and feet were unsuitable. Boss, what's the matter with you? Jin's face was taken aback, and after a brief surprise, he immediately changed color. He realized that this was not right, and it was impossible for Kaido to make such a mistake. Kaido didn't answer, frowning slightly. He looked at his body and smashed the right arm of the moldy imp, with strands of green smoke wrapped around it, which was the substance emitted when the moldy imp dies. The next moment, Kaido looked up and looked into the distance. Next to the little girl in red, the moldy kid appeared again. The blue smoke in the air condensed, revealing a little black face. The moldy kid is not dead at all. The cold light flashed in Jin's eyes, and the problem was instantly discovered. It's the ghost of that little thing. Jin waved his wings and rose into the air. At this moment, his body rolled in the air, turning into a huge toothless pterosaur, and a blazing flame rushed down from his mouth, extremely hot. Even the air burned out. Boom. The moldy kid didn't react, and was drowned in the flames of smoke. The little girl in red next to the flames turned around and trot, like a child who was frightened by this scene, and disappeared in a few ups and downs. Run. Doflamingo was startled slightly, one ghost ran away, and the other was burned. He glanced at Torpal not far away, and Torpal, who was about to go deep into the mountain, stopped, fell to the ground and fainted. Normal. Doflamingo breathed a sigh of relief. Immediately. He expressed his gratitude to Kaido and Jin, saying that he would give Kaido more surprises in future trades. Then, Doflamingo looked in the direction where the little girl in red had left. He wanted to chase it out, but the little girl in red did not leave a trace of breath, she could not perceive it at all, and she was very fast, and disappeared completely in the blink of an eye. Cut off his idea of chasing it out. It's late, let's go to rest today. I will send someone to keep paying attention these days. Doflamingo said to Kaido and Jin. He didn't think that the haunting was solved so easily. The little girl in red just ran away, there was no real was eliminated 4.5. Hear the words. Kaido nodded slightly. He raised his arm and noticed a blue-black child's handprint on his wrist. What is this? Kaido frowned. This thing doesn't look like a tattoo, it seems to be slowly disappearing, dimming a little bit, but it will take a certain amount of time at this speed. Let's go. I'm more and more interested in that little girl in red. Kaido smiled lowly, and walked to the resting place side by side with Kaido. Jin noticed the handprint on Kaido's wrist. You still have to be careful, boss, your hand. Bang bang. The words are not finished yet. The legs that the two of them stepped out suddenly became unfavorable, and at the same time they cramped and fell firmly to the ground, their faces on the ground. The air freezes again at this moment. Kaido and Jin, who fell to the ground, face to face, with big eyes to small eyes, all silent. Doflamingo was also dumbfounded, standing still on the spot with wide-eyed eyes, unable to speak. In the darkness, what no one noticed is that on the back of Jin's hand, there is also a handprint that is slowly disappearing. Port of Dressrosa. The hapless kid appeared in the night with a grin, jumping and happily walking towards Kaido's boat in the harbor. Just 2 steps out of it, there was a thumping puff, and a fresh shit was rubbed on his face. The little girl in red appeared quietly beside her, without any fear. She pinched her small nose and waved her hand. She looked at the hapless kid with disgust, saying that Baba was very stinky. Chapter 80 Make people laugh. This is the 4 emperors. Advertise here. It has been 3 days since the news spread from Naval Headquarters to all parts of the world. The haunting of Sabayati Archipelago was temporarily suppressed, and people's attention shifted to the upcoming terrible incident Whitebeard Pirates 2nd Division Captain Ace, who was about to be publicly executed in Marineford. Now, Marine is already building a huge screen to broadcast the whole process live and show it to the world. New World. Today's New World is surging, and there are successive battles. Marine and Whitebeard's subordinate fleet are colliding. Marine wants to stop them from gathering. This is a disguised weakening of the Whitebeard pirate group's combat power, in preparation for the upcoming battle. And at this moment, in a certain sea area of New World. The Mobile was sailing on the surface, and in the waters opposite to this big ship, a small medium-sized pirate ship appeared. Is that Shanks? Marco walked out of the cabin and looked at the ship emerging from the sea in the distance, with a look of surprise. Through the telescope, Marco vaguely saw that on the ship in the distance, a man with red hair and fire was standing tall and straight. Jaws's eyes widened. Why do they take such a ship? Where are the original Reed and Foss? It should be to avoid the eyes and ears of the world politics. I changed this ship and came to us, and I don't understand what they are thinking. Marco said, looking at the less powerful partners on the ship. Everyone, make preparations. Shanks are going to lean in. Don't be stunned this time, learn your lesson and stay away. This is the second time their Whitebeard pirates have seen Shanks in the sea. The first time Shanks appeared, he advised Cheng Ace not to chase Blackbeard. That time, the matter hadn't fermented yet, but Whitebeard refused. Rumble. The sea churned and the waves fluttered, and the red hair pirate's boat approached quickly, making it clear that it was for the Whitebeard pirates. Marco jumped up and stepped on the railing at the edge of the bow, looking at the red hair pirates getting closer and closer. Shanks, what are you doing this time? Shanks first grinned at the sight of Marco, and then jumped up and landed on the deck of the 26 Mobile. Just like last time, he arrived alone, and the other officers were all waiting on the ship. But this time it was a bit different. When Shanks set foot on the Mobile, his first glance was not Whitebeard. It's a strange old man sitting on the bow of the mobike, smoking a cloud of smoke. An invisible light flashed in the depths of Shanks's eyes. This person made him involuntarily think of the ghosts emerging from Kuzan's body. The appearances of the two are very similar. Then, Shanks retracted his gaze. He didn't pay attention to the others anymore. Instead, he looked at Whitebeard. He had something important to say to Whitebeard. Whitebeard, Ace is going to be executed, are you going to save it? Sitting on the steps, Whitebeard, who was covered with slings and pipes, heard the words. His old but still bright eyes pressed Shanks tightly. Shanks, do you want to persuade us not to save it? Hear the words. Shanks shook his head slightly. No, I will not persuade you not to save, because I know Whitebeard you will not give up any son. I came today to tell you if you really decide to go to Marineford, be careful there. Haunted. After saying this, Shanks stopped and pointed to the medium-sized pirate ship that he was riding this time. Ghosts are definitely not what they are in the legendary sense. The DeFosse almost sank. What? From the back, Marco, seemingly unable to open his eyes, suddenly became energetic, shaking because of Shanks's words. It turns out that red hair pirates changed ships because they were avoiding the attention of world politics. Then Marco took a step forward and asked, have you encountered a ghost too? Also, Shanks was stunned. At this moment, he noticed the gaze of many people in the Whitebeard pirate group, all of them subconsciously looking at the bow of the ship, looking at the old man sitting on the bow of the ship, still smoking. Seeing this scene, Shanks was puzzled at first, but the next moment his eyes widened slightly, thinking of a possibility, and contacting his previous intuition. Shanks suddenly looked at Marco. This person can't be touched or touched. Just stay there. Our brothers and sisters think he is a ghost. Marco said at the end, instead asking Shanks, that's a ghost, right? Shanks opened his mouth slightly. The Whitebeard pirates also hit a ghost. There is a ghost on the boat. Others are a bit stupid. Although I have encountered a ghost ship, it hasn't been like this yet, and a ghost has arrived directly on the ship. The next moment, Shanks thought of the ghost he saw in Kuzan. The two were very similar, which made him look at Marco. This is very similar to the ghost in Kuzan. Quote question mark. Quote. Quote question mark question mark. Quote. Quote question mark question mark question mark. Quote. Moment. The entire Whitebeard pirate group was stunned, all with dark eyes, and there was a huge wave rolling in their hearts because of this sentence. Kuzan. Shanks, you are talking about the current Marine Admiral, the kid named Kuzan who used to be next to Garp. This time I changed to Whitebeard and was stunned. This news is shocking, even Marine Admiral has been affected by ghosts. Shanks nodded and explained what had happened after meeting Kuzan before. During this time, his gaze was always looking at the ghost who was puffing up clouds on the bow of the ship. Father, ghosts are not as simple as imagined. We have 2 ghosts on the boat. Will it affect us to save Ace? Marco frowned. Admiral was possessed by ghosts, which made his indifferent attitude happen a little bit. Variety. 2 ghosts. Is there one other than him? Shanks' voice sounded at this moment, with a deep consternation in his voice. Yeah, Shanks, I know your kindness to us. Actually, we are no strangers to ghosts. Marco's eyelids twitched and he looked at the old ghost who was getting along day and night on the bow. Shanks was speechless. The other side, King's Heights, inside the central palace. Boom. There was a sudden sound of broken vases in the hall. Doflamingo silently looked at Kaido who fell on the ground. Just now, Kaido accidentally fell down again and knocked the vase next to him to pieces. Kaido got up from the ground with a bone, his eyes seemed to burst out with fire. Damn, that kid, I saw that he was going to be pinched to death. Doflamingo's eyelids twitched. Fortunately, it was blocked by sunglasses, and he couldn't see clearly. Kaido, when the mark on your arm disappears, there should be nothing wrong. In the past 2 days, Kaido's situation is very strange. The whole person is unlucky to the extreme. It is normal to walk and fall and step on shit, and even the pants are split into open gears. It makes people laugh. This is the 4 emperors. And it wasn't just Kaido who got home by bad luck, so did Jin. All the givers who followed them in the boat were all bad luck, and they were too bad to drink cold water. Seeing this situation, Doflamingo's heart could not be calm. How did 4 emperors Kaido be such a wolf fox? This kind of encounter is not fatal, but it is even more shocking. I know. Kaido was low, looking at the mark on the back of his hand that was about to disappear completely. In the past 2 days, the imprint has dimmed a lot, and it seems that it will disappear soon. Kaido sat on the floor. Wait until the mark disappears, then go find the 2 ghosts, but. Said this, Kaido paused and looked at Doflamingo. How about Whitebeard and Marine? The news that Ace was going to be executed publicly was aroused, and they also knew this, and while dealing with the haunting, they were also paying attention. The pirates under the Whitebeard group are all moving. They want to help Whitebeard and start a big battle. The new world is chaotic, and collisions are happening everywhere. Doflamingo said. Hearing that, Kaido laughed lowly. Ha 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 ha, very good, very good. This is the most happy news in the past few days. The world should be as chaotic as possible, otherwise it will be too boring. At this time, Pika came up, told Doflamingo Marine that there was a call from there, and observed that in the waters around Dressrosa, a Marine Vice Admiral warship appeared, coming towards them. Hearing this, Doflamingo nodded and chuckled. Buddha, howl, it looks like Marine wants us Shichibukai to help. A big battle may break out in Marineford, and Whitebeard is very likely to go to the execution ground to cause a terrible collision for Ace. You are going, Joker. Kaido looked at him. Go, otherwise Shichibukai's identity will be removed. It's no good for me, the Buddha howls. Doflamingo laughed. Let's go, get ready to get in touch with Marine. Doflamingo spoke, and at the same time stepped towards the outside of the palace, but at this moment, it seemed that his legs were not at his disposal. Boom. Doflamingo fell sturdily to the ground. Little Lord. Pika screamed. He saw that his young master's glasses were broken. At the same time, a cyan child's handprint was quietly revealed on Doflamingo's cheek. The other side. Eternal hell. Ding. Doflamingo is scared. Scared point +3. Ding. Jin is scared. Scared point +3. Open black lens bracket ding. Luo Wen heard countless system prompts ringing, a row of crazy screens, and even Kaido's scary point. Kaido sent a scare point +2. Unlucky ghosts are really suitable. Luo Wen chuckled. People who are entangled by unlucky ghosts will be very unlucky, even drinking cold water will choke their teeth, and there is no way to relieve them, they can only disappear naturally when the time is up. Although the direct damage ability is not good, it is extremely insulting. Close the system panel. Luo Wen walked out of the bedroom and looked at the goat that was tied to the door, like a pet, eating the A4 paper mixed weeds in the dog basin with his head down. He shook his head and said, I'm going to get a small yard. If you don't have a yard, it's not a problem to raise your own sheep. Open the door and go out. The outside of the wooden house is very dark, but Luo Wen has long been used to it. He moved skillfully and surrounded a small fence with wooden boards. However, just after the enclosure was completed, Luo Wen removed the fence again. The prisoners in the cages everywhere were very confused when they saw this scene. The characteristics of the prison cannot be lost. Luo Wen straightened up, glanced at the side of the wooden house, and planned an area in the bottom of his heart. Then he surrounded a piece of land with metal railings, and sealed all the surroundings with iron railings. At first glance, it looked like a metal cage was covering the wooden house. Quote question mark question mark question mark. Quote. The people around were all stunned, watching Luo Wen laying emerald green grass on the iron railings and placing exquisite potted plants. The next moment they heard the sheep cry of 810 bleat. Luo Wen walked out of the house, still holding a goat in his hand. In everyone's surprised and weird eyes, Luo Wen placed the chair and sat on the chair, holding the goat with one hand, like a sheep, letting it graze around here. The goat's 4 feet were trembling in a panic when they came out, but now it has slowed down and is happily buried in the grass. You have refreshed my 3 perceptions of prison. At this time, a voice came from not far away. Luo Wen raised his eyes and looked at the dark cage. The speaker was Ace. He smiled. How about it? Isn't my yard nice? It looks good. It's very pleasing to see such a small yard in the prison, isn't it, Buggy? Ace said seriously, and finally turned to look at Buggy. Yeah, it's so good looking. I have never seen such a beautiful yard outside. It is better than the place where celestial dragons lives. Buggy exaggerated flattering, and when he spoke, his eyes were deep, showing Luo Wen impossible awe. The more you understand, the more you feel that the man in the opposite prison cell is very powerful, and this also makes Buggy believe that you can escape from prison as long as you hold your thigh. Now Buggy has developed the hope of flattering when he sees Luo Wen. Even if he can't go out, he hopes to have a certain degree of freedom in prison like Bullet. Now Bullet is in the prison, much like another Luo Wen. There is no shackles, no prison uniforms, and he exercises in the cell every day, and he has no idea of getting out of the cage. And all of this is due to Luo Wen's methods, which makes Buggy very beautiful. Luo Wen listened to Buggy's flattery, smiled and looked around, and asked again, does it all look good? Luo Wen, on the 6th floor where you can't see the sun, even if you put a piece of shit here, as long as it is colored, we all think it looks good. A joke came out from the cage next to it. Upon hearing this, Luo Wen chuckled and nodded, this is true. Ha 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 ha. I think it's pretty good looking. Jinbei also opened his mouth, his voice getting smaller and smaller, it's getting more and more ridiculous. He looked at Luo Wen's upgraded cage again, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Ace also laughed, not forgetting to turn his head and vomit, 3 times outrageous, Jinbei. Luo Wen smiled, did not say anything, put the goat in the yard, and stood up and walked into the wooden house. It's a bit tired to work on the yard, he plans to take a rest. Not long after Luo Wen walked in, the door of Eternal Hell was pushed open. Several Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral walked in. This time, they are going to take Ace away, and the date of execution has been decided. Chapter 81 The execution began, and the ghosts landed on the island. Advertise here. Da da. The sound of footsteps echoed in the darkness. Huo Shaoshan and Doberman, Vice Admiral, strode into eternal hell. They were ordered to come here and take Ace to the execution point. But as soon as I came in, my eyes suddenly became weird. In a cell full of cages, a wooden house is very conspicuous, and it is strange that the outside of the wooden house is all enclosed by iron railings, like a house in a house. That is Luo Wen's residence. Huo Shaoshan's eyelids twitched, and he took a big sip of his cigar. I remember it was written in the report, but why is it different? Don't look, let's go. Doberman urged. His face was weird, and he didn't want to get involved with Luo Wen. Huo Shaoshan nodded, speeded up his steps, and walked towards Ace's cell. The jailer who followed them stepped forward and opened Ace's cell. The Huoshan Mountain took a cigar and squinted his eyes to make people unable to see the change in expression. Ace, your execution date has been decided, and you will be publicly executed at Marineford. In the dark, Ace raised his head and met Huo Shaoshan's gaze. He was calm and had nothing to say, and let the jailer come up and take him out. Are you still going to execute the sentence publicly? Jinbei gritted his teeth. At this moment, he was struggling to get up, and his chains rattled. Ace looked at Huo Shaoshan and Doberman at the door of the iron railing. He should come after all, but Jinbei had already told him Marine's thoughts. He knew he would die for a long time, and he had already done it for this moment. Got ready. Facing the impending death, Ace was calm, turned back and shook his head slightly to Jinbei, beckoning him not to be impulsive. Then, a faint smile appeared on Ace's face. Jinbei, Buggy, I have had a good time together during this time, you are all interesting people. When the voice fell, Ace turned his head and walked out of the cell under the escort of the jailer. The shackles of his hands and feet collided with each other, which was clearly audible in this prison. Passing by Luo Wen's wooden house, Ace paused in his footsteps. He turned his head and looked at the wooden house in the iron railing. There was a light on inside, and a figure could be vaguely seen through the window. He lowered his head and flipped through the book. Luo Wen goodbye. Ace looked at the figure, chuckled and murmured in his mouth. When the voice fell, he continued to walk forward, his expression still calm, but his steps were heavy, and for a moment he didn't want to leave the door of eternal hell. It's not that he's afraid of death, but he's worried. Father Whitebeard really came to the fire pit of Marineford for himself. It was his own fault that he lost to Blackbeard and was caught. Are you going to let the entire Whitebeard pirate group fall into it now? Ace really didn't want this to happen. When Doubtman heard Ace's words, he subconsciously turned his head and glanced at the direction of the wooden house. There was a sense of fear in the depths of his eyes. The pace under his feet was a little faster, and he wanted to leave eternal hell early to avoid any accidents. Inside the wooden house, Luo Wen heard the sound, raised his head through the window and looked at Ace, who was leaving in the direction of the gate. We will see you again. Luo Wen looked at Ace's back and smiled softly. Then, he continued to lower his head and looked at the storybook sent by Bullet in his hand. His words, his smile, no one saw. Outside the wooden house. Ace, W. Jinbei was struggling. For a moment, he even wanted to rush out to save Ace, but the iron chain bound him, and all his movements were just making the chain ring. I and Ace are going to be executed. Buggy was shocked, watching Ace disappearing into the darkness, and there was a storm in his heart. At this moment, Jinbei thought of something, turned his head and looked in the direction of the wooden house, but saw that Luo Wen did not know when he had left the yard and returned to the wooden house. A phantom could be seen through the window. Luo Wen, you can save Ace, just for the sake of getting along with inmates during this period. Jinbei begged, and his voice was loud, wanting Luo Wen in the wooden house to hear. However, the answer to him was silence. The black shadow behind the window was still reading the books for himself, and did not appear to respond loudly. It's really a shame to die so young. Someone was grinning in the cell next to him. When they said this, the conversation changed. However, Ace and Luo Wen are not relatives, save the ass. At the same time, someone yelled, Jinbei, you still yell less, stay in jail with peace of mind. I heard that Ace is going to be publicly executed. This is very interesting. Roger was the last to be publicly executed, right? Listen to the voices of people around you. Jinbei's heart was sinking. His request, Luo Wen did not respond to Ace's ending. Is it really the end? Thinking of this, Jinbei's eyes were red. Inside the wooden house. Luo Wen lowered his head and finished reading a story in the book. The fox repays gratitude. It is really interesting. Does even the people in this world have bestiar control? Luo Wen closed the book and temporarily placed the storybook on the next shelf. He leaned on the chair, his eyes darkened, and smiled softly. You can't stop going to the top of the war. This is the best event to harvest scares. When talking, Luo Wen had already opened the system panel. This time he directly called out Theoghost, page, and pulled down all the way, looking at the column where he bought ghosts. Ghost Gate. There are countless ghosts in the gate, where the Ghost Gate is located, and the destiny of all ghosts is around, turning into an endless ghost domain. The price is 5,000 scary points. The line of sight stayed slightly on it. Luo Wen looked at another place. Cheap ghosts. The lowest level and cheapest ghosts, without self-awareness, relying on the remnants of instinctive action, can be expelled by ordinary and conventional means. The price is 1 scare point 100 pieces. Then Luo Wen raised his hand and tapped lightly on the system panel. Ding. Redeem the ghost gate successfully. Ding. Exchange for cheap ghosts. Ding. 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 A series of successful redemption prompts, frantically swiping the screen at this moment. Under the escort of Huo Shaoshan and Doberman, Ace left Impel down and came to Naval Headquarters in secret at the fastest speed. The execution stand has been set up. Under the escort of the execution marine, Ace walked up step by step. The shackles on his body were still not lifted, and every step he took would rattle. As we stepped onto the high platform, the line of sight became wider and wider. Ace raised his head and saw that the current headquarters is densely packed with marine, everyone is ready to go to meet the war that may break out at any time. And below the execution platform, all three admiral from this department were all present. They sat on the chairs, exuding a deep and terrifying aura. Then, Ace saw Sengoku, and saw his grandpa, Garp. Garp meets Ace's gaze. He was silent and speechless, but he knew from his face that there was no way to calm down in his heart. Once Roger gave Ace to Garp to look after. When Garp agreed and saw Ace, in his eyes, Ace and Luffy were no different. They were both his grandsons. Grandpa, I'm sorry, it's my own choice. Ace said. The voice was very soft, but it was enough for Garp to hear. The voice fell. Ace was escorted and passed by Garp. He came to the execution platform and was forced to kneel. The two naginata used for execution were against his neck, and the blade was very cold. Sengoku watched all this. He didn't speak, let alone said anything to Garp. After a long silence, he took out the phone worm to let all personnel pay attention. Don't let your guard down. Whitebeard might come to the execution ground. At the same time, Sengoku was worried and asked the two admirals if they were abnormal. Kuzan and Sakazuki both shook their heads, saying that there was no problem with their state. That's good. Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief, then he looked at Branu who was not far away. Have you found a female ghost? During this period of time, the personnel of Naval Headquarters have actually been fully evacuated from the headquarters. Nowadays, there seem to be many people guarding the execution platform, but once the execution is over, they will immediately evacuate and go to the new G1 branch. At that time, Naval Headquarters will officially change positions. Sengoku did not relax his vigilance. Before the arrival of Ace's execution, he had been monitoring every corner of the headquarters. Fortunately, it seems that the female ghost has not appeared, and everything is calm. Quote. Everything is ready, Marshal Sengoku. Branu saluted in front of Sengoku. All aspects have been contacted. All preparations are done, and he can face the sudden outbreak of the war at any time. Yeah, Sengoku nodded, but never let go of his heart. What they have to face is the strongest man in the world, the four emperors Whitebeard today. Marshal Sengoku, the Whitebeard pirates are out of surveillance. Someone yelled. Frontline intelligence came, and the Moby Dick in New World disappeared. Boom. At the same time, outside of Marineford Harbor, the sea was roaring, huge ships approached quickly, and the masts of the thief flag were hunting. The Whitebeard pirates grind down the big ship group. Attention everyone, the strongest man in the world. Sengoku yelled to the phone worm, whose voice was amplified by the radio and resounded over the entire Marineford. The world shook because of this. The sea is whistling and the wind is blowing, which indicates that today will not be calm, and the expected battle is really coming. The Sabayati archipelago, located in the first-hand broadcast site, and people all over the world were shocked by this, staring wide-eyed to see the situation clearly on the screen. The reporters took up paper and pen, not daring to miss any detail. This moment, people are paying attention to the war, and what they don't know, the money is that on the coast of the Naval Headquarters, some figures have landed one after another. On the eastern island, the dark space was distorted, and the bloody clown stepped out of the darkness. His body was dripping blood and there was a silent smile on his face. Hanako appeared next to her, bouncing around. After being strengthened by the startle point, she was able to leave the toilet and was no longer in the same spirit-bound state before. A little further behind, the pale white jaw coconut crawled out, and she was still wearing a cooking apron. West. A beautiful woman wearing a mask was walking in the alley, towards the execution platform. The strange thing was that the sun was shining, but no shadow appeared on the ground. Central. In the empty house, the TV suddenly turned on by itself, the screen flickered, and a slender and pale hand came out. Sadako Dakota is here to drag. At the same time, a white skirt appeared on the roof of this building. Bachi-sama stood quietly under the scorching sun, and the wind moved her skirt, elegant but gloomy. A little farther away, two children appeared. The little girl was dressed in red and looked dirty and affectionate. The child next to him had torn clothes. As soon as a bird flew in the sky, it happened to be a drop of bird droppings, hit him in the face. So far. Gathering of ghosts. Hee hee. The clown tilted his head, his laughter was creepy. This moment, all the ghosts that appeared to land on Marineford walked towards the center of the island, the most dynamic place. Chapter 82 Rider. Blackbeard, if you come near the cabin, I will kill you and pay you back. Advertise here. The world is shaking, and the appearance of the Whitebeard pirates in Marineford's screen has ignited everyone's emotions. All the people in Sabayati archipelago gathered in front of the broadcast screen subconsciously stood on their toes and stared at the screen with wide-eyed eyes. The Whitebeard pirates is here. A reporter shouted, and the pen quickly recorded in the notebook. Sweat was dripping from his nervous forehead. How many years has there been no such war? Four emperors led a large ship group, directly to collide with Naval Headquarters. It can even be said that since the death of Rox, there has been no such large-scale collision. It can be expected that many people will die today. The whole Marineford will inevitably flow into a river, and the sea will be dyed red. Where's Whitebeard? He is there, and all the people who come are under his command. They didn't even see a cadre. Someone stared at the screen closely, scanning left and right with a pair of eyes, trying to find Whitebeard's figure. Suddenly, a picture appeared on the screen. The sea area of Marineford's inner bend port was uplifting, and the big ship shaped like a whale broke through the water and landed directly inside Marineford. Come on, that is the Whitebeard pirates. I can't read it wrong. I have already seen Whitebeard's figure. This coon is one of the New World 4 emperors. The most powerful man in the world has finally come. Behind him is the captain of the 16th Division of the Pirates. Hey, who is the old man smoking next to Whitebeard? Someone was horrified and stared at the old man smoking while sitting on the bow of the mobile. I don't know. Whitebeard's son. No, he doesn't look younger than Whitebeard, maybe even older. Who is that? Too many people were puzzled and couldn't recognize the identity of the old smoking man. Everyone knew about the members of the Four Emperors Whitebeard pirate group, but such old smoking man had never heard of it, and no one knew him. At this moment, the picture on the screen changed again, and the Whitebeard ship group set off and collided with Marine's defense line. Boom. The artillery exploded in crowded places, blood and bones mingled together, splashing around, and the first drop of blood in this battle flowed. It's fighting. Hey, the old man didn't move, he was still smoking. What is the situation? Did he come to make fun of him? He is still smoking at this time. What is he doing? Is he handsome? Are you kidding? The gunfire grazed his head, still motionless. This old man has a big heart. Many people were shocked because of the performance of the old man smoking. This performance of sitting firmly on Mount High attracted the attention of many people. It made people subconsciously look at the old man and couldn't help but look at this battlefield. Boom. At this moment, the terrifying vibration exploded from the loudspeaker, and Kuzan stood up. The white air covering the sky erupted from him, and the whole sea was frozen by his own force. At the same time, Sakazuki shot. The magma rushed into the sky, turned into a rain of fire and fell, blasting a big ship on the spot. However, there is obviously something wrong with this picture. 810. Gosh, what's the situation? Who? Behind Kuzan Admiral. Sakazuki Admiral's magma. People from all over the world have their eyes wide open, and Kuzan and Sakazuki cannot be separated from their eyes for a moment. At this moment, even Whitebeard, who was standing on the Motobic, looked at the two admirals, and their expressions suddenly became weird. Kuzan at this moment, standing on the ice, maintaining a squatting posture, while behind him, the swollen and festering water ghost leaned out half of his body, full of evil and weirdness. Kuzan was very calm about this, as if he didn't care, or was used to it. That's the ghost, Shanks said. Whitebeard narrowed his eyes and looked in the other direction. I saw. Sakazuki's whole body boiled with magma, and a group of ghosts surrounded him, accompanied by howls of terrible resentment, which looked extremely permeating. Compared to Kuzan, it's just too much. Whitebeard. He fell into silence, and subconsciously looked at the smoker who was smoking not far from him. The smoker was still smoking, even his posture did not change. The ghost itself is a weird thing. This smoking ghost seems to be motionless, but this is even more surprising. The fact that there are ghosts in Kuzan and Sakazuki makes people feel even more jealous. At this moment, Whitebeard suddenly thought of something and looked at Pelusolino, who was standing in the other direction. And the Whitebeard pirates also followed. No, not only these people on the battlefield, but even the people who watched the war from all over the world looked at Pelusolino one by one. Even some new Marines who were transferred from other places to participate in this top war looking at. Poor Solino's expression was slightly startled, and he felt that he was suddenly attentive. Oh yeah, don't look at me like that, I don't have the ghosts in them. Pelusolino's habitual wretched smile, but his heart is numb. What is it called? Kuzan, Sakazuki, they had a problem, but they didn't encounter any ghosts. Poor Solino has a very weird feeling. Without these ghosts, he seems to have fallen out of the admiral ranks. He raised his brows, his eyes under the sunglasses looked around, observing whether there were any ghosts that would suddenly jump out, and then he had to step in the footsteps of Kuzan and the others. This was definitely not what he was looking forward to. It's just preventing this from happening. Don't listen to his bullshit, be careful, there may be ghosts on him too. At this moment, the voice of Marco, the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, came. CGEF Pelusolino. His face twitched slightly and almost didn't stretch. Distance. The people of Sabayati Archipelago, through the big screen broadcast, Marineford sees all this in their eyes. Wow, a child cried and wiped the corners of his mother's skirt. Is this the righteous admiral? Mom, they look terrible. The child's mother wiped away his tears. She wanted to explain to the child, but she opened her mouth and saw the ghost-ridden Sakazuki on the screen. She didn't know what to say for a long time. Mom, there is a man behind Admiral with curly hair. Isn't he tired? There are other children who are very naive, tilting their heads and asking the parents around them. No one can explain, this kind of picture is unthinkable and creepy. There was a gossip that appeared some time ago. At the time, I thought it was fake. I didn't believe it. Now it looks like someone was shocked and sluggish on the screen, and others were urging. When the pirates were captured, rumors of ghosts emerging from their bodies came out. Could it be that Sakazuki Admiral killed so many people that they turned into evil spirits and haunted him? Look at those shadows, their whole body is scorched, and they look like people who were burned to death, and Sakazuki Admiral is lava fruit ability. An older person opened his eyes wide, as if he had discovered something, and told his guesses in disbelief. This moment, two admirals are in the limelight. All over the world, everyone's attention is already going to divert from the old people who smoke. And before the war that everyone is paying attention to. Impel down. The guards of the prison were running, and everyone looked stern, and their faces were very ugly. Just now, a mouse broke in, and they are now searching for it with all their strength. And that mouse is Luffy from the Straw Hat Pirates. At this moment, inside the 5th floor. Ace, where are you? Luffy ran wildly in the prison corridor, still yelling when he looked left and right, trying to find Ace who was being held. His goal is clear, to rush to the 6th floor. Luffy got some news, Ace is very likely to be imprisoned in the 6th layer of Impel Down that the world does not know, Eternal Hell. Boom. Luffy slammed open the heavy Eternal Hell door. At the same time, he was also followed by the Shemale King Ivankov. In an instant, light came in from outside, and Eternal Hell's eyes looked towards Luffy in the darkness. Not wearing the guard's clothes. Who is this? Someone murmured, his voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for many years, and his lips were chapped. Ace, where are you? Luffy rushed in, shouting loudly, without any scruples. While shouting, he couldn't help but look in a direction deep in the prison test. There was a courtyard surrounded by metal cages, and there was even a weird wooden house in the middle. There is still such a thing in the prison. If it weren't for Luffy's eagerness to find Ace now, most of them would have been yelling. Straw Hat Kid. On the other side, Buggy yelled in surprise after seeing Luffy come in. After seeing Luffy's appearance clearly, Luffy retracted his gaze to look at the wooden house and looked at Buggy who was shouting, "Ah! Red Nose, why are you here? You were looking for Ace." At the same time, Jinbei also looked at Luffy and spoke. "Yes, I'm looking for Ace. Ace, where are you? I'm here to save you." Luffy yelled, but there was no Ace around. Is it the wooden house? Luffy looked at the strangest wooden house. He looked at all the cages around him, but there was no sign of Ace, only this wooden house was not seen. Wait, who are you? Ace is not there. Don't go near the yard of the wooden house. It will not do you any good. Jinbei saw Luffy walking towards the wooden house. Is that the cell where Luo Wen was detained? At this moment, the ladyboy King Ivankov who came in with Luffy thought of something. Is this wooden house the residence of Pervert, who is imprisoned on the 6th floor but can move freely? Huh. Jinbei looked at Ivankov, surprised that he would know the name, and at the same time nodded, confirming Ivankov's guess. Luffy, don't lean over, the man in the wooden house is terrible. Ivankov held Luffy, he knew how terrifying the man living in the house was, and said he didn't let Luffy get closer. Ivankov doesn't want Long's son to die here. Although he has friendship with Luo Wen, he doesn't think that friendship can be so deep that Luffy enters his home. Luffy turned his head, tilting his head and wondering, who is Luo Wen? No, I shouldn't care about this now. As he said, he looked at Jinbei again, Uncle Murloc, I am Ace's younger brother, I want to save him from here. Younger brother. Jinbei's pupils shrank, before Buggy next to him spoke quickly, Ace has been sent to the headquarters for execution. What? Luffy and Ivankov stared at the same time. Their speed was already fast, but they were still a step slower. Let me go out quickly, Sombrero, let me help you save Ace. Buggy's eyes glowed, and he wanted to let him go. Luffy didn't hesitate and punched the cage to help Buggy get out of the trap. At the same time, he was also asking Jinbei if he wanted to come out together. Jinbei gritted his teeth and finally nodded. He was going out, trying to prevent Ace from being executed and prevent the situation from changing to the worst. At the same time, many people in the prison spoke up, wanting Luffy to let himself out. Jinbei shook off the mirror cuffs on his body, and when he walked out of the cage door, he looked in the direction of the wooden house with seemingly nothing. After a short pause, he stepped forward and walked out of the Eternal Hell door. From beginning to end, the wooden house was very quiet. Eternal Hell was shaking. Many prisoners saw the hope of going out, so they were talking noisily, but the wooden house was always quiet, no sound came out, and there was no man living in it. Appeared. As Luffy left Eternal Hell fell into silence for a short time, but this silence did not last long, and soon there was movement. The screams came from outside, and many people in Eternal Hell heard it. A pair of eyes lit up in the dark, and they can be sure now that something major happened to Impel Down today, and it is very likely that the mess outside will become a mess. Huh, is the 6th floor so lively today? Suddenly, a voice sounded, and a slightly fat figure stepped in from the door. He has a curly black beard, his expression is very open at the moment, his face is unruly smiling, and he scans the cell in the dark ambitiously. Blackbeard steps into the Eternal Hell. As soon as he comes, he will release the prisoners, let them compete out of the strong, join his pirate group, in exchange for the opportunity to leave eternal hell. There was a big movement, many prisoners opened their mouths and wanted to go out and fight, collisions occurred one after another, and the cages cracked one after another, and these existences that had been erased from history were seen again. Blackbeard walked into the eternal hell and stretched out, releasing the legendary characters. He saw Letterfield, who was on par with Whitebeard on his own, and the flying pirate Golden Lion, who had successfully escaped from prison with his own legs. Also saw the descendant of the Devil Bullet. Blackbeard is puzzled. Why didn't Bullet wear a prison uniform in the cell, and he didn't wear mirror cuffs yet, so he looked like he could walk around at will. Then he saw a more puzzled picture of a wooden house in an iron railing. Can there be such a thing in prison? Blackbeard was puzzled and curious, and subconsciously wanted to approach the wooden house to see who was inside. Teach, I advise you not to approach that wooden house. At this time, a male and female voice sounded. Ninetails Hudiyame walked out of the cage. She had a thick bloodline in her hand, and there was only one corpse left in the cage she walked out of, and all the people in the same cage were left. Was killed by her. I don't want the pirate group I just caught up. It didn't take long to get to know the captain before he died. Daimei said this in a joking tone, but at the same time, there was also solemnity and caution in her words. Hear the words. Blackbeard's face suddenly changed, and his steps hovered in the air forcibly. Those who followed Blackbeard also heard the words and looked at it. Who was shut in there? Badgers frowned. Luo Wen. At this time, Chout came out in the other direction. He killed the people in his cage and stood at the end. While looking at the wooden house, he solemnly said the name. Badgers was stunned when he heard the words, is there such a person? Not only him, but Blackbeard is also stunned. When will there be a man named Luo Wen who can make these eternal hell prisoners jealous? Don't you know Luo Wen? Chout frowned, but this time it was his turn to wonder. I don't know. Blackbeard shook his head. Heard this. Choat fell silent and did not speak anymore. Daimei next to her looked at the wooden house and suddenly smiled. This is really a mysterious man. Blackbeard's eyes flashed. He also noticed something wrong. From the beginning to the end, no one of the prisoners on the 6th floor approached the direction of the wooden house, which shows that the prisoners in the eternal hell are all afraid of the man named Luo Wen in the wooden house. Such a person is worth winning. Blackbeard's eyes lit up, and he wanted to try to win. However, at this time, there were unhurried steps in the darkness, and Letterfield walked out and stood in front of Blackbeard. If you want to be against him, I will kill you myself. I owe him a favor, and I am trying to pay it back. Letterfield's eyes were very cold, and he stared at Blackbeard like this, if Blackbeard dared to continue. Taking a step ahead, he will do it without hesitation. Let's go. Don't go near there. Put your mind away, Captain. Even Choat came up, trying to pull Blackbeard away. Blackbeard was completely stunned. Standing still, he looked a little embarrassed. He actually wanted to say, he didn't want to disadvantage the people in the wooden house. Is the man named Luo Wen really so dangerous? Even if it's just approaching, it makes these proud legendary pirates unwilling.